So we'll call the regular meeting to order. Public comment, non-agenda items, questions, comments, concerns that are not on the agenda today. Okay. Conflict of interest, we'll do a round table. Peter? None. None. No. Okay. None. Okay. None. Who are we missing? Mike. I don't think he's on.
Good call like at 9.
Yeah, I talked to him and I'm betting him that he's not going to make it by 9.
Yeah.
We had a good talk this morning. All right.
Brian, thing we talked about.
Yeah.
Okay.
We got two more, sorry, third there.
I actually remember this. And it's kind of strange today. We're kind of missing one of our extended board members. Steve Johnson passed away, and just want to kind of give a shout out to Steve, all the work he did with this team, and a reminder of everything from the interlocal agreement to committees that I didn't even know he was on until I read Explore Big Sky. We'll miss him. He was always good for some input and support, especially with the resort tax as well.
Yeah, a lot of stuff happened.
Yeah,
That was a nice obituary.
that was really well done. That was really well done.
Thanks.
So yeah, just hopefully we'll be hearing about a little memorial for him or a shout out sometime. So we'll go into the consent agenda. Was the minutes from March 19th, financial reports and general manager reports. I'll entertain a motion for the consent agenda. Okay, Dick Fast, second. Mike Wilcynski. Any discussion? Always go to Terry.
I'll just make comments. The revenues came in slightly above what we expected for March 30th quarter end. So right now we're slightly below our budget on the sewer revenue, slightly above on the water revenue. So as long as the next quarter comes in, we should be right on budget for revenues.
Great.
And the expenses are coming in slightly under what we budgeted as well. So we're sitting going into this last quarter.
I'm sure you'll give us a little more of an update when we talk about the Mil Levy rate as well.
Well, that's within my package. So did we have a separate line item for that?
We have it as a business action item.
Okay, yeah.
So we'll go through it on that. We just got to make sure that you were prepared for that as well. All right, we have a motion, we have a second. Any other discussion? All in favor on the consent agenda?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried unanimously. All right, committee reports. Northwest Energy Land Site Agreement with Al.
Yes, we've received a draft agreement from Northwestern Energy that's been forwarded to our management team as well as our legal counsel. We haven't gotten comments back from Susan yet. I think we're anticipating them by the 25th. Was that the case? So we've got about another 9 days till we get that back. But I took a look at it and it seemed to capture everything that we've discussed fairly concisely. Actually, I was impressed with how straightforward it was. So I think the next steps will be by the next meeting, we should have an agreement that we're proposing the board approve.
And you did have that proposed exhibit in the board packet. I thought I saw here.
Oh, I think
The land.
I think the land was
Yeah, kind of where we're starting with this. So it's a good one to take a look at. I think it's in page 320 of 327. But it's good to take a look at that. It's going to be a good one to track as we go through the survey and so on. In the spirit of, again, kind of a shout out. If you haven't taken a look at the pond and the stream and how that work was done, that is, you got to give that team a shout out on getting that done this winter and how nice it looks. I mean, that's well done.
Moving mud.
What's that?
Moving mud.
Moved a lot of mud, got it out of there, but it kind of at least gives us a cause to reflect and say it was worth the efforts on both parties, I think, to get this all put to review.
And we'll have a business item on the agenda.
Yeah. You bet to notify. Okay, District Canyon Project Committee. That's usually like
Yeah, I don't I don't think we've met since our last meeting.
No. The only thing we have is that we're moving forward with the 60% design on the lift stations.
Okay.
We'll have a good exhibit next month to talk over and show you what the latest plan is for placement of lift stations and pipeline, and latest cost estimate. And I think the plan is to tee you all up for your take on feasibility in June. June board meeting, so it'll give you a month to let it sink in and maybe follow on questions. Back and answer at the June board meeting, and then you can. take it on Feasibility.
All right. Flatiron, really hasn't been anything on Flatiron, hasn't been a subcommittee meeting. Of course, it's all about today. Do we have the report ready to go with that, team?
Yeah, Pat should be here at 8:30.
Great. So that's, I think that everybody's been holding on that. Chris, anything from you on that?
No,
Okay.
thanks.
Just been waiting it out. Spanish Peaks, I'll speak for that one again, Dick, just because we're waiting on some legal, or a couple of legal opinion letters from Susan on that. I talked to her yesterday. Susan, are you on today?
She is on the meeting.
Great.
I am on, and I apologize. You guys got put on the 7th burner for the last month.
Well, it feels like the 8th.
Well, fair enough.
No, that's, we did talk about it a little yesterday, and you know, these are all very important.
Yes.
Before we can move forward on. So I think the key is that we just keep tracking progress. Any comments that you have, questions for the board or vice versa for Susan?
No, I'm good. And but I do appreciate Al bringing that up. Johnny sent that to me on the 3rd with a note that he needed it back by the 25th. So I will get that exchange. I'll get the exchange agreement back.
Okay.
Thanks, Susan.
Yeah, thanks. All right, treatment committee?
We continue to work with Lone Mountain Land on a pilot project for the salt alternative systems, and I think we're going to schedule a meeting here in a couple weeks, and that's kind of where we're at.
Okay. Policy and benefits, I see a couple items under business action items that things are moving forward. Anything that Alan, Mike?
I'm finishing the redlining. We met with Gina a couple of times, but the way our schedule falls with insurance and stuff, we won't be at full quotes until next month. So once I get all that stuff, I'll schedule a meeting, probably first part of next month, once we get that. And go over everything, and then try to get it finalized. So that's what we're waiting on, is the benefits quotes. All right. Business action items today. Al, I think you had talked about this the last meeting, that we would want to get a board vote or take board action on notifying the BSOA.
Right, as you recall, in the agreement with the BSOA, we have two alternatives. One was to be paid a fee for the water rights that they need. The alternative was this land swap and the easements that we need. And we're required per the agreement to notify them by May 15th, which is before our next meeting. So I think we are at a stage where we can feel comfortable. Obviously, everything's not finalized, and we knew going into the agreement that the issue would not be closing on the property. It would just be being far enough along that we were going to continue to pursue that route. So I believe we're at the point where we can give Johnny authorization to notify the BSOA of the intent to exercise the easement aspect versus the payment option.
Want to make a motion to that?
So I'll make a motion that authorizes Johnny to notify the BSOA of our intent to move forward with the easement portion of that agreement. Susan, if you think, as you're listening to me, if I need to legalize that in some way, please let me know. That's my motion.
And Al, you did great.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
BSOA is on the meeting as well too.
Yeah, so we did.
They are on the meeting as well too.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Second by Dick. And did they just join?
They've been on for a few minutes.
All right. Well, hopefully they heard how the shout out for their work over there. That's great. Any other questions regarding that?
I guess maybe if it's not clear, we should notify them in writing.
Yeah.
I assume you would do that.
All right. All in favor?
All right.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good progress. All right. Terry, tell us about approve the estimated mill levy rate of 4.78 for 2024. Tell us. Yes, tell us.
Well, annually, we have to do the county requires that we give them an estimate prior to the budget cycle that they're in. And this year, the mill rate that we've come up with is 4.78, which is approximately the same as last year because it's based on the same loan schedule that we had last year. So it's 4.78, and you asked that I come up or give you a number per 100,000, it's approximately $11.30 per 100,000 of your valuation, what the county values your property at. For instance, house in Meadow that's valued approximately $2 million would pay about $225,000. A Broadwater condo, $225,000. $25, not $200.
I saw some people stop breathing.
Yeah.
So much for that clarification.
Yeah. And then a Broadwater condo valued at approximately $600,000 is going to pay about $65. So they're expected to pay the same that they did last year.
Okay. Any ratepayer outreach in any of this? You put in the packet what's going on or anything from there with their billing, electronic or?
No, this has been on their tax bills for over 20 years now. And so I think they're well aware of it. And when it dropped, the sewer bond dropped off last year, I think many people noticed it. And then in 2027, we'll be completing this loan as well. So
Got it. Good. All right.
Good news all around.
So that is an action item required.
Yep.
All right. I'll entertain a motion to approve the estimated mill levy of 4.78.
Yep.
So
Al. Al made the motion. Dick seconded. Any other questions for Terry? Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously again. All right, I don't know, is this necessarily an action item by the board? Superintendent Vince, Jake and Adam successfully completed promotion probationary period, right? Recommended final pay adjustment to take effect May 1st. I don't know if we need an action item, but we will, and it's a nice next step.
I think it warrants to support everything that these guys have been doing and all the abuse that we've given them the last 6 months growing into the new positions. They've taken it quite well and have stepped up to it. Still a lot of work to do, but so far everything's been great and I'll talk quite a bit. So, you know, Adam's starting up a whole new plant with a whole new crew. So kudos to him, and coaching from Ron and I, and I've all done well. So I think it's been a little eye-opening on a lot of stuff that they're getting to be involved in now. So I think an action item to finish that off would be great for the board to show their support for the work they've been doing.
Motion.
I'll make that motion.
Open it over. That's a motion by Dick. A second?
Second.
By Peter. Any other discussion?
I'd just like to say congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you. It's a great team building down there. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Great. All right, Scott, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items for under old business. It's your show.
Thank you. plant is, believe it or not, supposed to throw the switch today, I believe, and start pulling permeate through the membranes. Fingers crossed. You want to come down and drink some effluent? Next time, I
We'll pass.
it's good.
I think Ron should, it's just first some beer, I said, yeah.
There's been some hiccups beyond the 2-week delay that we talked about last month that are more on RSCI's side of the ledger, which is actually okay because they were frustrated with DuPont, and these are all pieces and parts of components and responsibilities. And so now there's enough egg on other people's face to not throw blame and just get through it. And so everything goes well today. We'll be live with liquids update versus liquids milestone, and that means that all those capacity assessments can now be done against the 910,000 gallons per day instead of the 650,000 gallons per day that you had in SBRs. So some breathing room at point. And then they'll flip over to taking the SBRs offline and starting to build the additional solids digestion capacity and utilization, and that will take us through October. As Ron pointed out, generator, final backup 2 megawatt generator won't be here until first week of November, so that's now our longest lag item. So the purpose is probably the final punch list, November, December, and wrap up right at the calendar year.
Treatment levels for the summer, improvements coming out of the pond, irrigation, things like that. Substantial improvement. I know that, of course, they're just coming online now, but will we see improvement for the treatment level going on to the golf courses and so on this summer?
We should, for sure. It'll take a while to chew through all that water that's sitting out there now. And as we bring better water to it and
Every day
down, by midsummer, certainly we should see some really good low numbers on nitrogen coming out of there. And
Great.
Nitrogen shouldn't be the limiting factor on irrigation ever again, really.
Yeah. Great. That's really good news to know every day it's improving. We're going into that ratio in the pond. So,
well, it's 6 years, 7 years of planning, funding, design, construction. It's been a ordeal. So it's something to, I don't want to spike one ball red, but
please don't.
to get to this point, it's a big one, and took a heck of a lot of patience from your staff and everybody involved. It's been a long, gauntlet.
Scott, what was the original completion date?
2022, I don't remember the exact date. And that, not all of that is construction. Some of that was we
It's 23.
slowed down design. By the time we got to bidding, it was 2023. So, but the entire project's about 2 years from where we thought it would be in 2018. Construction is about a year behind.
I think that one of the more important deadlines is when there was a delay, a major delay that put us to where we are today. And that seemed to stick for about a year. So about a year ago now, we said, look, this thing's going to have a delay. We just got to stay on track. And it seemed to stick. So that seems like an important timeline that you're able to stay in the lane for 12 months without having extensive. Remember those electronics and computer boards and everything that went with it. So.
Well, I think in the environment we had to work through,
Unbelievable.
it was, I'm happy, and I think we're in good shape.
That's something to celebrate. That, it's officially right now, liquids.
Extraordinarily hard time to build anything, much less the extremely complicated wastewater.
Yeah.
That flows right into water resource recovery facility capacity, current phase 1 and phase 2. So current hopefully is irrelevant after this week, but that's Dowley's being rating on that SBR plant is 650,000 gallons per day, 1.04 NGD peak. with this plant passing the liquids milestone, the capacity is 910,000 gallons per day average annual, 1.8 MGD peak, 1.4 MGD max month. We've run your last 3 years of flows to bring that up to date and see where that sits. It's, you're about a little less than 500,000 gallons per day on an average annual basis. So you're about 50 to 55% of the capacity, or what I'll call wet capacity at the plant. And that ratio falls through with, or follows with max month peak day, peak 60 days, which is what Terry Campbell made Ron and I do back in 2020. All those ratios are right around 50%. So you have about double the liquid capacity down there that you need today. That's not paper capacity, which is all the commitments and such, but that's what your sewer shed's producing versus what that plant can treat. So
What's permitted at this point?
Right.
When you say
Yeah.
double,
yeah, I mean, permit is squishy because you all don't have a permit because you're a zero liquid discharge facility. So these are all based on ratings of the plant, what the plant can do, based on what the membranes will pass. It's basically our own internal stop line. So plenty capacity, and then phase 2 capacity just rips the roof off everything because you just flip that plant over and double its capacity to 1.8 MGD average. So you can take everything that's currently foreseeable, whether it's in the canyon, whether it's up the mountain, pretty much anything you could possibly need, which is why you all pulled the trigger on pouring those additional 3 basins.
We'll build out of the plant's about a 30,000 per day population. That gives you some idea of the flow capacity of the plant, maybe to handle like full build of 3 million a day. Yep.
And Johnny's got us tearing into all the SFEs and flow-based commitments and agreements, and Ron's helping with that. What that is showing, and I don't want to advertise this as final, we still got a lot of details to wade through and spreadsheets to sort through. But is that, like I said, wet capacity, you have a ton of treatment capacity. On paper, current commitments, you are right about where that plant, what that plant can do. So any big additional commitments at this time will throw you into phase 2. Now, it's going to be many, many years before all that will be built and live and producing wastewater. So you got plenty of time. What Johnny and I have been talking about is you all are starting to reconfigure the way you want to do things to more like a decent sized city would do this, which is track all this, whether it's flow-based agreements or SFEs. You don't necessarily go build infrastructure as soon as you need it on paper. Most states regulate that you start that process with them at about 80% capacity. So if you're a major city, you're at 80% of your capacity at your treatment plant, they're going to make you start with a facility, master planning, facility plans, permits, funding, and show them all that so that they don't come in and slap a moratorium on you because they think you're going to run out of capacity. So it seems to me like that's probably where you are headed. And like I said, today you're sitting at about 50% treatment capacity. Once you get to 80, you'll need to essentially have plans in place to populate those 3 basins, bring SCADA, build the additional membrane treatment building, and have that ready to go. But that could be 10 years, could be 20 years. Depends on the rate of growth. Effluent disposal or reuse capacity is tighter. So we've removed the bottleneck of treatment capacity now with this project. We need to go remove the next bottleneck, which is going to be reduced capacity. Depending on how much water Adam can pump up the mountain on any given day, depending on how dry it is down here and how much water we put on Correspondence, of course. You're more like 75 to 85% capacity on reuse. So by that philosophy of let's get plans in place for increasing reuse capacity when you're at that 80%-ish amount, we need to sink our teeth into a reuse project here pretty soon.
What was the existing capacity?
The existing capacity, so going up the mountain is pretty simple. It's 160 million gallons a day. It's what that
A year.
Yeah.
a year.
Yeah, and
Thank you. 160 million gallons a year. That's what the pump stations and the pipeline were designed for. That's what the agreement with Lone Mountain is. You can't quite do that right now because of some minor hydraulic limitations. Eventually, you can go realize all that capacity with larger pumps.
Is that sustainable though to say you're not gonna pump 365 days at a maximum? So do you have you identified a sustainable number?
The concept is, we did a preliminary engineering report, and we sent it to the EQ for that mid-mountain booster station. That would enable you to pump more like 200 million gallons a year. You wouldn't do that. All you need to do is pump 160, but it would give you some downtime for fixing a pump seal or a leak in the pipeline you need to fix. You need some downtime. So that's a project that's on your horizon. It's in your small CIP at this point. We're working on eventually formalizing all those into full CIPs. And to your point, yeah, you don't want to have a system out there that has to be operational every single day of the year because it's just not wise.
but you gave a number earlier, where what percent?
The 70.
Depending on the water year and how much African pump, which we're gonna look at those pump curves and see exactly what we're capable of doing. It's 78 to 85% capacity on reuse. This year, because it's been dry and if it dries out, you're not gonna have issues. A really, really wet year is what we'll push that, give you a stress test.
But with snowmaking, that should balance out with some new snowmaking permits. Does that feel limited by the 160 million anyway?
Yeah, the current planned snowmaking is all within the 160.
Good.
If somebody else, like Boeing, decides to make snow, then yes, that changes the game.
For reference, last year we pumped 85 million gallons over 186 days.
So about half of the 160.
So you've got Meadow Village, you've got the mountain, you got a handful of other accounts down here in the park. But we've talked about maybe there's snowmaking on the other side of the mountain, maybe the canyon comes through. Maybe there's something in Firelight Meadows. Maybe there's groundwater disposal, maybe there's potable reuse. You have options. It's just starting to pick the one that you know you can bring to fruition soon and following forward on. $2020 DEQ flow deviation for the district. Just want me to describe that process that Brian and I went through.
Everything,
Kevin Smith. So
reevaluating that again.
Do we have to?
So somebody in DEQ back in 2020 got the idea that the district was over capacity on treatment. So they dragged Ron and I through about 3 months of workshops with them to show how many SFEs we committed to, what the flow-based agreements are, places are, and what at that time the SBR plant was capable of treating, which, like I said, was 600,000 gallons per day. Ron and I gave them all the flow data. We gave them our take on what we thought the gallon per day per SFE should be. We did that kind of on a max month basis. DEQ ended up forcing us to be a little more conservative and using that, what was really a 60-day peak flow period. Terry's reasoning was, this is not a normal situation out here with normal seasonal peaks, right? You have the holidays, you have spring break, and then you have I-9 in May. And you also don't have the typical discharge permit and say Bozeman or Helena has where you have a maximum condition and surface water discharge. So he did the math on that and said it's 107.3 gallons per day for SFE. Do you concur? Writing was on the wall, we weren't going to concur, and so we wrote a concurrence letter, accepted the 107.3 at that time, knowing that over time, you can almost change that number as often as you want. It's kind of an ordeal, so you don't want to wear everybody out every single week in that number because it's changing a bit. But I think what you're doing, what you're having us do today, we're going to reset that number, and it's going to be a significant reset. I don't want to tell you what the number is going to be then because we're still sorting out how many SFPs you have. Exactly based on billing and current flows, you know, it's more like 80, 90 gallons per day for SFP. Not there yet. We haven't finalized that. The plan was to have that before in May.
But a timeline before you can maybe confirm that. Confirm the approval of that, I guess would be the key.
Well, we won't have approval for it until we get it in their hands and they give themselves 60 days for that sort of thing. It would probably be honestly July, August before we had that all buttoned up and signatures.
I'm asking that for Susan as much as anyone. I know she's been eager to sort some things out with that 107.
Who do you think at DEQ would be reviewing that deviation this time? Gary's retired.
I think it's probably going to be, it's always the engineer, so maybe Denver still.
He's still
the face of it, but he's the guy behind the guy that's actually checking this.
Good.
Because it's got to be, I think they stand that, and so they make their engineers fire off on it.
I don't think it's me. I think it is.
I'm in.
He's buying lunch.
I don't think it's.
By God, it is.
I'll bet it's hard.
I don't wear this coat but once a century.
Well, looks good on you.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, that's an important topic, obviously, right now with where we're at with everything. I think we just have to kind of keep shifting these priorities around, and that standard deviation is going to be something that I know there's some people eager to get a timeline with. Although you said I'm not going to put out numbers, and then you put out numbers, but that's okay. I'm not going to erase that on the tape. You put out a number.
I put out a range, right? And
No more ranges, no. It's just good to know that seems like a reasonable timeline, I think, as we sort through some of this.
yeah, and you all, I would recommend you do it every 3 years. Just because I&I improvements happen, dry years, wet years happen. Your infrastructure changes slowly.
You know, just to confirm, because we're talking about every 3 years, Ron, in a presentation you shared with us, it was 2018, the data was taken in 2018 that put us at the 107 for the standard deviation, correct?
Correct.
So the reason I'm bringing that up is you're actually at 6 years from 2018. So you should be able to maybe magnify that modification because we've just skipped in a cycle. You know, you've got accurate information and you've had a 6-year run to assess that.
And I ran them out for 5 years after 2018. 2018 was VP in that 5-year window.
It was 3 months only, right? Like March, April, May.
I came very close to 107 using 60 days as the 2 max months. And the lowest value in that might have been 2022, which was around 95-ish gallons per day for SFE. The original facility plans that HCAM did in the 90s, they used 82 gallons per day. And we've looked at data that kind of shows that we've been hanging between 70, 75. If you average the entire district
against flow, SFEs are on our books, and it's been pretty consistent for a long time. Good.
Yeah, and that'll be our analysis and our recommendation to DEQ. Can't sit here and say they want to try to push us to be more conservative again. I think at this point, we'll be in a better position to push back to something that's more like 80-90, because we have a plan that has averaging maximum peak day ratings done in a more modern way. And you all have flow data that is on point. There's no giant 2018 on there at this point. DEQ is satisfied with 3 years of data.
Yeah.
And you've done 99 improvements. So you have the evidence to back it up, to put in the hard work to shrink that number. Pulling out some of that iron.
On that comment, Vince, would you mind talking about the I&I problem we fixed last fall? Because it's really good storage.
Yeah, so we know that there's an I&I issue, and we're constantly working on trying to find these. A lot of them are old pour in place manholes that are seeping in from groundwater. Occasionally you'll get lucky and find a broken service or something. And last year was one of those ones where we found Peter had identified an area where there was a unusual amount of flow between two manholes, and we chased it down and tracked it, and it was a pretty extensive repair. It's actually a 3 or 4 day project to get it all buttoned up. But after putting it all together, we estimate that we captured about 80 to 100,000 gallons per day on one service repair.
We saw it in our big master data graphs immediately.
It's extremely incredible to think that one service line can contribute that much I&I, but it was. And so, if you took that 100,000 per day, that basically is a 70-gallon-a-minute leak into the sewer. And essentially, it was up on Rising Bowl and the kind of over on the west end there. And that area is just a real swamp. That year particularly was an extremely wet year, and the service line had completely separated. We were essentially taking a full pipe, 4-inch pipe, just pumping that groundwater straight into our sewer. And,
That was year round.
well, last year it almost was. So
Year round.
it dries out every year, but last year it didn't really dry out until after August. So, yeah, we pumped a lot of extra water into it, and it was very apparent in our plant flows how drastic that was, and based off of plant flows is our estimate on that 80 to 100,000 gallons a day, which is somewhere in the range of 50 to 70 gallons a minute. So,
Vince, you seeing late May I&Is right now?
we're already starting to see I&I. Obviously, it's melting off quick. It's not been a heavy winter, so I think it's going to go fairly quick this year. I don't think we're going to have as much time to cap I&I as we did last year, being that it was so wet all year. Well, the spring will tell if it stays consistently wet and doesn't seem to dry up this year. We might have a little better luck finding some more I&I. We've already found a couple smaller instances that we're going to be addressing, but yeah, it's just a springtime. That's the way it goes. We're just a never-ending search for the next big one. And we love these big ones. They're great stories. So
That's a good one.
You want that to include that story in the application for a different gallons per day for us. BSRAD applications, so they issued questions to Johnny on April 2nd and said, you got till April 9th to respond. The majority of those were about how we do business, how you estimate how many folks you're serving, how you assess levies, how many accounts you have, what's the ratio, approximate ratio between full-time residents and visitors, tourists that you serve. So some good questions. I think they are just trying to understand how you all work more than they have in previous years. And then some specific questions about each of the applications. I think the operations application, we found some of the most. I think they're used to funding infrastructure projects. It looks to me like they like individual infrastructure projects more so than helping you with operations, but we gave them a lot of information about why that application for operations assistance went in. And, you know, they can consider it and say yes or no. They also asked good questions about Mountain Village water tank and Little Coyote sewer improvements. So we'll see. I think we got two workshops, one tomorrow, one first one's coming up where it's more face to face. Basically advocating for districts' needs and projects. So we'll see where it lands. Questions on that process? Terry was helpful. We ran him through the ringer twice on your accounting, and Jenny Muskett's our point of contact. Who's genuinely interested in understanding how you are working and what the stressors are these days. Okay.
Anything else?
My letter is in the packet. I don't think, I think it covered it all. Canyon, we talked about 360 milestone. Will be a lot of content for you next month on that. Yep, and then also we'll probably spend a good hour talking about SFEs and flow-based agreements and current flows
Next month? Any questions, Scott? All right, thank you. A lot of good news in that report today. Everybody's looking back over their shoulder the last couple of years. Turn the corner. That's exciting stuff. It really is.
Busy for sure.
All right.
Next two are for Ron. He set up the geotechnical.
Mouse and keyboard. I'll just speak on the number 6 and I'll pull up a short thing on number 7, but. So following up on what Al was talking about, everything's moving forward to acquire the land up in Sweetgrass Hill for a future water tank. Part of our due diligence is to do geotechnical work up there. So we have a contract signed, I think it was in the packet, with TD&H. They've got a drill rig lined up to come in May 27th to do some geotech work on that site. You never know around here what you're gonna find. I just know that none's ever been done up there. NWE with the old substation didn't really have to do much because they were putting a lot of weight on that, and the water tank certainly weighs a lot. So we'll get that. The cost is, I think, about $54,000 total between the rig and the report. We've got it for geotech. And we've got 60,000 allocated from resort tax for this project. For acquisition, and I think we can go to resort tax and say, we're gonna swap land. We're not paying for the land, but we wanna use those $60,000 for the geotech work.
54, it's a quarter acre lot.
Yeah.
That's. Well, I've done a few geotechs. I've never seen a 54,000.
Welcome to 2024. Well, just getting a rig is not easy either. Getting schedule on these things. And the clock's ticking. Our resort tax is up June 30 of this year. So I think it's important to move things forward and to also vet that property for use as a water tank site. So May 27th, they're scheduled to come in for that work. The other one is on the,
Ron, before we move on from that.
yeah,
Have we made a formal request of resort tax to confirm that they'll accept that?
Not yet.
that's,
Do that.
So let's, can we do that prior? Because it sounds like
Yes.
this won't happen until after our next board meeting.
Yeah, I just have to get some time with them.
we talked about getting a letter. They have a meeting tomorrow. I think it'd be best if that goes to them and it's presented in person at the board meeting.
Yeah, I have a note in there. I just haven't been able to sit down with him yet to.
What, do they meet once a month or do they meet more frequently?
I think they're monthly. Yeah. And there's still another, you can do it in May too, but we have talked about getting that in front of
That
them.
was like in the after our board meeting again in May, right?
Well, if we get it in front of them, they're slam busy with all the applications and stuff. So we're trying to get everybody together.
Come on, this is an easy yes.
Yeah.
It's an easy yes to say yes.
It's an easy.
I think, yeah, I think it's an easy ask and it's an easy thing to decide.
Yeah, I don't anticipate it being a problem, but I think we should
Yeah.
get that before we do the work.
We're on it.
Thank you.
All right, the other one was the water rights work. So Jake and I went to Missoula a couple weeks ago, met with WGN at their Missoula office. Their water rights team is based out of Missoula. So we met with Julian Cole was on remotely and we drug Carl Bulig out of retirement. He came into the meeting as well. So we had their three, Jake and I put a pretty big folder together for Jay, which he has now on all our water rights stuff. And we spent 3 hours going through kind of water rights in general, and then water rights as they relate to Big Sky, and then talked about the scope of the work that needs to be done, which is now part of the contract, which has been signed. This is just kind of a short list of the big tasks in that contract. So we're going to clean up our place of use. We've got some issues there that need some work. And fundamentally, we started as 3 public water systems. You had the Mountain Village with its own number, Aspen Groves, and the Meadow. We connected all of that together in 2006. So your place of uses on the mountain wells, which were good for years, all of a sudden aren't because you're able to move water down the hill. So your water right place of use doesn't cover that meadow area. So a big part of this will be cleaning up place of use everywhere. Another big item in this is to change water rights that are designated as commercial, to change those to municipal. That's the best kind of water right you can have. It gives you the most flexibility in terms of how you use that water. This is a list of all our water rights. And you can see in here that some are designated as municipal. We got a whole bunch of them, particularly on the mountain, that are all commercial. So there's change application work to change those designations that'll be part of this contract work. Perfecting existing rights. I did a number of what DNRC calls Form 607s. You have a date to perfect your water right, but you can ask for an extension. So I did extensions on most of our rights here out to 2032. Jake has all that stuff, but so we got a lot of time here to work with. And if we get the change to municipal, that all goes away, because once you're municipal, you don't have to worry about that 2032, but you can reset it in 2032 because we're still not built out here. And that was the basis of what I did to extend all our water right dates out to 2032.
It's the value of the value.
Well, it closes the file for DNRC. Basically, you've still got to have an open file until you perfect your water. So We're still growing, they know that, and that was a pretty easy application to make. It's administrative, but then they send us notice that you now have until 2032 to perfect that. But you could ask for another extension.
Yeah, so but if you go from commercial to municipal, then you don't have to perfect them, it's in.
That's my understanding, and we talked about that with the WGM folks, that if we're successful in that, then that 2032 kind of goes away with the municipal rights. All of this is gonna take time, like 2-3 years. So this will happen and get finished after I'm out of here. But we're at least setting the table to get going on it, and you've got a good group with the WGM consultants and very veteran water rights people working on this. The other one, probably the most important, is to utilize offline wells to mitigate for either new points of diversions. For example, the well in the south end of section 1, the Flatiron wells, mid-mountain. Anything else we might drill, you can't go file a new water right on those, so you gotta mitigate somehow. We're actually sitting in pretty good shape with volume appropriations on well points in Village 1 and Village 2, Aspen Groves 1, 2, 3, where those appropriations could be moved off those points of diversion to other wellheads or points of diversion. In Mark Kinane's report, he estimates that we've got about over 900 acre feet of available capacity in water rights we hold. That's 302 million gallons, which is a lot of water. So that's a big part of this. Here's our overall place of use. You can see some big holes in that. Spanish Peaks is their own water system, so that hole's there because they have their own water rights. But if you look at the remainder of Lone Goose Meadows around there, it's not in the place of use of any of our water rights. So that'll be one piece of this, is to clean that up. And then you typically want to go big on your place of use. If you think you're going to be this big, you want to actually try to cover a bigger area. And they did that with well 7 up in the Yellowstone Club. That is supposed to cover the first 3 phases of Andesite Mountain, and it actually extends further over into other phases of YC. We're limited on what we sell up to the hill, so it really doesn't matter, but at least you're covered by place of use in the event they extended that service area further over to the west. So it's a big task. It's going to take time, and we're just getting started.
Can you go back to the map?
Yep, right here.
Section 6. Is that cold smoke?
Cold smoke's right down there.
32,
Within
31.
a place of use, but not in the district?
Yes, so that Johnny's gonna talk about cold smoke.
Okay.
That is a good example. That's this area here. That's a great example of place of use stuff. So if you ever think you're gonna service any development in there, you better get it in your place of use now, even though you may never service that. Otherwise, you're gonna have an issue with the subdivision planning of that eventually, but I mean, looking at that, you'd probably go for the whole section, right? 32 and whether
31, right?
Yeah, and then we got the fire department, you know, we've stepped out pipe to go down the road to the east. Fire departments down the road, so there needs to be some work done on how much of the lots going on the east side, south side of the highway are.
So the fire department's in 32?
They're right there, yeah, it's hard to tell from this map. We're very close to that. Yeah, somewhere right in here.
31, I think.
And then in here, you're getting into Calistep.
Yeah.
So that probably would not need to be in your service.
Getting where?
That's Calistep property, the
Okay.
big open.
Soldiers Chapel.
Yeah, above Soldiers Chapel.
Yeah.
So the fire department is in section, it's actually section 31.
Yep.
So all of that'll take time and, like I say, we're just getting started, but it's all necessary work. Another good example is Antler Ridge right here. We got a half of it in our designated place of use. All of section 27, which is a holdover from the RID 305 boundary years ago. So that was all included. Antler Ridge, you'd probably include that because someday you may service that. You kind of want to do it once. Okay, any questions on that? Let me get you back to yours.
Left.
Where is yours? Oh, there it is. Yeah, here you go, John. Jake can't wait. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, anything for Ron? Questions? Okay. Used to be the main attraction we've been counting down to for about 3 or 4 months now, about that Flatiron report.
No question, Pat.
Hop right in there, grab a little puck and it's all you, man.
It's not too high.
I'll go around here. Give it a meter, hold up. Hopefully not.
One cup presentation.
No. Might see you up there.
We go to this one.
This is why the board packet is so long. How many pages is this report itself?
That one's pretty, I can't remember that one. There, it's got a whole bunch of appendices. Also, so it's got all of, there we go. And this one's the middle. Well field analysis report. Maybe go to like, I figure we just start on the map. Which is kind of like 5 pages manage, there it is. Gives us an idea of where everything's at least.
Are you?
All me, anytime.
Anytime.
All right, well, again, I'm Pat Eller, I'm with Morrison Merrill Engineering out of Bozeman. I'm just here to talk about the, basically the wellfield, Middle Fork Meadows there. I'm not gonna hopefully bore you as much as I did last time with a ridiculous amount of graphs, but I thought I'd just kind of go through an overview of the whole thing. Again, and kind of pull out the parts that may have changed a little bit since my last presentation. So here, this map, where's that mouse? Can I use the mouse? Just the point, the pointer doesn't work on the screen. So again, here, I guess this would be Mountain Village over here, and down this way would be Meadow Village, and there's the Highway 64. This is the Middle Fork Meadows well field we're discussing. This is like Thunderwolf left right there. And so we had Middle Fork Meadows, which in my map is backwards. This is 1, 2, and 3. So I gotta change that. So anyway, don't look at those numbers. So this is Middle Fork Meadows 1, this is 2, and this is 3. This is test well 9 the district put in over the last 2 years. So if we go just through here, test well 9 was completed in the basal Kootenai in the upper part of the hole, and then below is the Morrison. There's a packer set at 190 feet that separates the two, so we could measure what was going hydraulically in between the two aquifers there. Both of them did produce a lot of water. We have not done any testing on it, or district hasn't done any testing on it, so I don't know how much water, but I know both made multiple hundreds of gallons a minute in each zone. So MFM1 here is completed in basal Kootenai. MFM2 was in the middle, and MFM3 is in the Thermopolis. You can see here's this is actually a surficial geology map. And so this is the Kootenai through here, and this is the lower Thermopolis, and this is the upper Thermopolis. So you can see what you're basically starting at surface and going through the yellows, either alluvium or till, one of the two, which is just like sand and gravel basically, and clays. So MFM1, I'll just go through the testing here. MFM1, we tested that well, it's 350 gallons a minute, did a 7-day constant rate test on that. MFM2, we did a 200 gallon a minute, 7-day long constant rate test on it. MFM3, we did a 150 gallons a minute for 7 days. And we monitored all the wells we were testing, including TW9 in both the upper and lower sections of that well field. Let's see. Where's my? And so this is kind of what, well, was it? So we went ahead, we did all our tests, so we could see what was going on. We did find that the test showed that we had radial flow conditions in all 3 of the zones. In the original presentation I gave there, MFM3 appeared that we were seeing a linear flow response in that well, testing well 2 on well 3. Going back and reviewing that, it's definitely a radial flow response. And so that basically changes the overall thought that well number 3 would only be utilized for a peaking factor well. Instead, they could complete that as a public water supply well and utilize that well completely for use. So that would allow you to add that in as a volume for both flow rate and volume out of the well field. Basically, at the end of the day, we looked at all the data. We looked at MFM1. I thought you could do a final design yield of 350, MFM2 200, and MFM3 150. So that's 700 gallons a minute for a peak flow out of the well field. You're going to pump all 3 at the same time, and you could get 1 million gallons a day out of that well field. That's 120 million gallons a year, and 372 acre feet is what that volume works out to. And basically that's over 120-day volume here. And so when you're pulling water out of fractured bedrock, especially even if you are seeing radial flow response, like they'll let it rest longer than it's pumped. So use a basically kind of like an industry rule of thumb where you'll let it rest twice as long as you let it pump. So you get 8 hours of pumping, 16 hours of rest. And so that's where that 120-day volume comes from. And so that's a very conservative analysis on the amount of volume and flow you could get out of that well field. These are all kind of just projections of drawdown out to 120 days in each of the wells and observation wells and pumped wells. And end of the day, you just tally all these drawdowns, interference drawdowns between each well. They come up with a total drawdown in each well at the end of 120 days, your total available water column, and then this is the amount of water you have over the pump at that 200,000 minute time frame. So if you ran those pumps constant for 4 months, you'd still have water over the pump in all of those wells. I would recommend, of course, that you would instrumental wells so you can monitor them. You might be able to utilize more than they are, and then if there's different changing things in the world, like, I don't know, climate change or others, it would allow you to make sure you maintain enough water over the pump throughout the years. 120 days, obviously you're not going to pump it straight for 120 days, but that just basically gives you an annual volume to extract out of that well field. And the big sky's kind of very well situated for that with, you know, you have your 2 on seasons, your 2 off seasons. So you've got kind of like a natural rest period in the big sky area in between those 2 seasons. Water quality out of wells, I know, is an exciting topic. And this has construction well logs.
On the construction, well 1 and 2 are fully built, constructed, and approved by DEQ as for public wells.
Correct.
Screen, everything. Well, 3 is not permitted, but it could be.
Right. Yeah, so well, 1 and 2 are, yeah, they are certified as public water supply wells. So the construction has been certified by DEQ for those. Well, 3, when we originally went for drilling that was approved as a public water supply well. Now you'd have to go back to DEQ and get that recertified as a public water supply well. So the way I would look at doing that is kind of like in a 3-stage process. Want to develop a plan, submit that to DEQ for approval, get your approval, and then they're going to give you a conditional approval to basically complete the well and test the well. I would bring in like a wireline type outfit, and they do a thing called a spinner log, just to make sure we know where the water's at, which right around 175 feet is where the water really coming in there, but just wanted to verify that. And then for completion, I would just use probably an 8-inch screen and an 8-inch casing. Easiest way to do it probably is to backfill the hole on the bottom with gravel, put a little bit of bentonite on top of that, and then set your casing in, cement the surface, drill that back out and set a screen. Develop it again, and then you're going to need to go ahead and do a 72-hour constant rate test minimum on that, just to meet the DEQ rules. So we'll need to be tested again, which when you're testing it again, it'd be great to monitor any other wells, of course. And you'll get a full water quality sweep, the whole 9 yards again. But it has been approved in the past, and I don't see any reason why the DEQ wouldn't approve it. Right. As a public water supply well. On that another note there, I guess TW9, when we were doing the testing of the 3 wells, we observed in TW9, interference drawdown is just a drawdown, one well causes on the other. And so when we tested well M1, we had a lot of drawdown in TW9 in the upper Kootenai section of the well. And we didn't see a lot in the Morrison section of the well. So I think that you could definitely put another well over in that TW9 area, probably not right at TW9, but somewhere in that area.
And that had a packer in it, right?
It did,
So it
yes.
could separate the two aquifers.
Yeah, so we can see.
Test well 9 never really got to that next tier up because you couldn't,
We never pump tested it.
right?
We used it as an observation well while we were pump testing the other one. Original plan was to pump test that. But when we all met on it, it was decided it's best not to, just use it as an observation well.
But you're able to separate the impact by having that packer on what the drawdown was between the two aquifers.
Correct.
And in the report, it's noted that, you know, we pulled samples early on in test well 9 with the packer. We had 2 gauges on the tree at the top, which we were satisfied we were seeing pressures from each zone, and the packer was holding. The additional water quality work that needs to happen hasn't happened yet in test well 9. That'll happen this spring where we're gonna go in, the thing's been flowing all winter, right, because they're artesian. We're gonna go in, pull a sample on the Kootenai and the Morrison after they've been sitting, running for months through the winter. And that work will happen once we can get out there. I don't know how much snow's on the poop chute. Yeah, a lot, I'm assuming, so we can't even get in there to test them, so that's a TBD on test well 9 at this point.
Yeah.
Something else I thought was really interesting, like read the report, called Pat, said, why in the world, you have big water in here, drill 2 wells, you get them permitted, you drill, why in the world were they drilling 3 wells? At the time, Dolan was applying for the Thumb properties to annex, he wanted to do a big hotel, the base of Thunderbolt. All this water seemed like it was a lot more than you would need for what Dolan was working on. And you answered it for me. I'll let you finish it.
Yeah, we actually drilled those for the Spanish Peaks Resort. And so we were gonna drill the wells and put water up and over and
Feed the whole resort.
feed the resort area with those.
I didn't realize that.
And so that was, that was the original intent of those wells. It wasn't for the Thumb property, it was for the resort area.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then they eventually found their own wells in the resort and they got 6 of them now. So,
Yeah.
By the horseshoe there.
yeah, that was the
Yeah,
first one.
Doing the whole horseshoe, and then they call it the little horseshoe after that, just west of it, there's 2 there.
Yeah,
And then
it's
there's
pretty
2 on the south side of the big icy bridge.
Yeah,
John had told us that at some point.
he may have, he would have known.
Maybe I was off on it.
So, like you said, we put a packer in there so we can measure both top and bottom, and all I wanted to say was that the Kootenai, if you put another well there in the Kootenai in that TW9 location, it would adversely affect the well field, and the well field would adversely affect it. I mean.
The Morrison wouldn't, didn't have an
Morrison-
impact on well 9,
Right, you did see it, there was an effect, but it was like,
nominal.
yeah, nominal, so there were 2, if I recall, and then. And there was a little bit of a question if we didn't have, if we were seeing actual effect in the aquifer, or if we were seeing some leakage around the packer when we were doing our tests, just because it's set in there, but. There definitely was very minimal drawdown in the Morrison zone. That would be a good spot for a 4th well, I would say.
And you can't complete test hole 9 as a public well because their sewer line runs right by it. So you gotta be offset from a sewer collector 100 feet. That well's right next to it. So it truly is a test hole.
If I was gonna put another one in there, with my money, I would go through and then would get it approved as a public water supply well prior to drilling. That way you're only spending money once,
Correct. And we kind of,
drilling, testing.
we've done the test hole, so
How
that.
far from that test well will you need to go? And again, pre-approval, based on pre-approval, how far away do you have to go to be with outside of that 100-foot?
Well, I think
Radius.
the terrain and existing road cuts would drive that. You've got some 2 tracks through there that are down strike, along strike of that.
Yeah,
That makes sense for future finished public wells in there.
How do the water rights figure in? Do you need one for each well or any month that you pull out? Or?
Do it as a field, you can have multiple diversions in one water right, I think.
Are those water rights available now?
Well, that goes back to what I talked about with the work that WGM will be doing. So you've got appropriations and volumes where you could potentially move those to other points of diversion within Big Sky here. You couldn't apply for a new water right, new volume on it. You'd have to use existing rights to make this work
With existing volume,
with volumes we currently hold and water rights that we have.
and there are no more available in the aqua or in the
Part of the closed basin, long history of that. This is not a fun place to find water.
Anywhere.
Because even if you find it, you can't get a water right for it. Even if you find it, you can't get a water right.
You have to mitigate it. Either,
Process.
What?
You can, but it's a process.
I mean, you guys did it successfully up there in Moonlight, but it was a process.
11 years later.
And I don't know if you could pull that off.
11 years. That's process right there.
I don't know if you could pull that off now or not, but you did it, so good for you.
So how much of our existing water rights are we using?
Well, that slide I had up in Mark's source update report from 2022, Mark Canane, this is the last report he did for us before he retired. He speaks to that and looks at, so you've got your demand stuff, how much demand we've got. You've got all these water rights and volumes on paper, and then you have actual well performance, how much water you actually are getting pumped out of each well over time. And there's a difference between the water right volume on paper, what those wells can comfortably pump. Great examples, Lone Moose Meadows, there were 2 wells. Over time, they're about 20 gallons a minute, but the volumes that sit on those 2 wells is decent. And so you would move the difference, keep the water right intact, or maybe abandon those altogether. But you'd probably keep those intact, and then you move the volume difference to a new point of diversion. Then DNRC, it puts them in a position where they can process that application, because you're not adding to the volumes that you're pulling out in your water right base. So it's gonna be tricky and interesting, but it's doable.
Can we put a number on what we're using of what has been approved in the existing one?
Yeah, and Mark did a pretty good job of that.
And that would be about 2/3.
2/3 isn't too far off, yeah. And then the production reports Jake does, that ultimately is what all the water that's being produced adds up to each month.
Yeah.
So then you can look at that against how much volume acre feet of water you've got available, and the difference is kind of what you have to work with. And Mark, in his report, he said it's about 900 acre feet, which is a lot of water.
That are available.
Potentially, yes. Yeah.
That's what we're cleaning up. So when I refer to water capacity, what our actual basic capacity is.
But because we have that capacity, that's what potentially enables the water from these wells to be used.
Yeah, and Mark goes into the whole SFEs, the commitments, and his number was 117 gallons per day per SFE, which includes irrigation demand.
Yeah.
So that drives that.
That's a good point.
Yeah, and Scott hasn't even looked at that.
That's a good point, the irrigation.
Right,
What is it, 6-7 times? summer
Yeah, we've
versus
done-
Winter.
yeah,
Yeah. This summer, maybe.
Irrigation kills everything.
yeah,
That is a tough one. That ratio's gotta come down.
yeah.
Wow.
So is this an accurate statement that we are using about 2/3 of our existing volume of water rights?
I wouldn't pin it to that yet. I mean, we can go dig, yeah, but roughly, without digging into it, pulling up the data and looking at it hard, I wouldn't want to guess, but.
But then once you added, let's just say it is 1/3 more, we have no more water.
Right, you gotta mitigate, so that's where you're
And that means what?
mitigate meaning, so all this reuse stuff we're doing, I think there's potential mitigation of water rights for snowmaking, for example, where you're storing water on a mountainside, it's going back into the ground, you're reusing that water, it's going back into the aquifer.
Okay.
I think there's a potential mitigation claim there. It's not gonna be 1-to-1, it might be 0.8-to-1, but it's still opportunity to develop new water volumes off of all this reuse we're doing. Your irrigation stuff is 100% consumptive. There's no mitigation water there. The groundwater disposals in the canyon, fire line, snowmaking, that sets you up for potential mitigation.
Are those the three primary mitigation options?
And then, potable, indirect potable recharge. So there's three. But
And we're looking at all those, so we refer to it as a water balance.
Yeah.
So it's
And is
somewhere.
is that ratio generally the 0.8 you referred to for?
well, I don't know what it's gonna be. What I mean by that is, so you have 1 million gallons you make snow with, you might be able to get a mitigation claim for 800,000.
Okay, so that's to be determined. That's,
Right.
there's not a standard
Right, but I
ratio.
think all the pieces are in place where you can make a claim to get some of that back as mitigation.
It's always gonna be less than.
I think so, but we haven't gone there, and I don't, well, we're the only ones doing snowmaking in Montana, so I mean, it's all
Right.
typical big sky, we're first in and figuring it out.
And something else to keep in mind too, is we're constantly working on our leak detection and, that's gonna drive that long number or prolong that number as well as we capture more water through leak detection.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That's complicated.
It's
Dick's over there. Dick's right feverish. And, Dick, I think what you're trying to do is, it's a four-legged table and it's use, right, obligation.
Yeah,
And
it is tough.
And,
Management, and that all leads us into, our master planning and all that stuff.
well, I'd say use, right, starts an obligation for the future. And what Dick's doing, I can see it from here. He's writing two-thirds use versus 50% through the obligation, plus or minus. That's what you're, yeah. It's, yeah. Do you feel as though we're still in a proactive position on a lot of this as we modify our rights?
Yeah,
And we keep
all
going
of
on source.
all of these building blocks are really good stories that we have for the future of Big Sky.
Yeah.
I think, I feel pretty good about all this.
I feel like we hijacked his
I
presentation.
did, I'm sorry.
No, we did.
That's all right. It was all good. It's all very important stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's what happens when you sit.
yeah, but those are the four legs.
Yeah, balancing the available water with sewer capacity.
The 117 was one that's a shocker, the 117 because of summer use.
Yeah, so we were trying to do the same kind of analysis of capacity in terms of SFEs, gallons per day.
Remember a few months ago, you asked for the whole picture, so it's a lot of parts and pieces to it. It's part of the reason why we went ahead and pulled the trigger to create a water department to start building that and looking into that. So, right, it's a big piece.
It was a big piece.
It's kind of cool.
Jake's head has a pop like a pebble, yeah.
Give him a couple months.
Right. Yeah, no, and I get that. All of that's very important. The only thing I was gonna basically talk about there at the end was just the water quality here. And that was again, we did see in MF1, we saw elevated concentrations of both iron and manganese. We didn't see anything that was elevated in MFM2, and in MFM3, we had elevated manganese. We don't know what the water quality would be out of the TW9 yet, but hopefully we'll see that in 3 months, 2 months.
I would think, yeah.
And then, yeah, and so here again, so it meets all the primary drinking water quality standards, severe health and human health related. And then the iron and manganese is a secondary concern, which is taste, odor, smell, whatever. So iron and manganese, iron stainless fixtures red, manganese stainless fixtures black, basically. It gives a metallic taste.
It's gonna reduce manganese, or make manganese of itself. At 105, I think might be the target. I think their manganese limit.
Yep, they are definitely reviewing that right now. The EPA, at the EPA level, is turning that into a primary, which would require treatment, or secondary does not require treatment currently, but it's definitely something to think about. So then, I don't know, there's, again, we talked a little bit last time, whether you do treatment or you do some sort of a blending program to limit the iron and manganese in the water.
So iron's just not a health issue, manganese is.
They're looking at whether right now it's a secondary, but EPA is looking at making it a primary drinking water contaminant concern, along with PFAS and others. Right? But yeah, so the EPA kind of is always reviewing. That's the one that they're definitely looking at now. Yeah. So I guess overall, I just go back up to our. Here was our final time pumping rates for the wells and the pumping water levels, but I think the table up here was just wanted to make sure the door. So that's basically what the analysis shows the safe yield from that well field is, all three. Of course, MFM3 is not considered a source right now, but we can easily get it DEQ and approved as a public water supply well.
And I think you got potential for a Morrison well up there.
Yeah. Which, is probably a 200, 300, 400 gallon a minute well, somewhere in there. We're making so much water when we're drilling through that section that you get to a point where you just can't get any more water out of the ground with the drill rig, but you can watch your air pressure and everything.
That's the day I was up there.
Yeah, it's a lot of water.
There's a lot of water.
So it's definitely something to look at also.
Yeah.
So what you're testing on this is the drawdown, which is a short-term thing. What about long-term? How long could you, are they a closed system? Are they wide open, or how do you determine long-term recharge?
So what we did here is, so I'll just show you. Hold on, you go back up, I went too far there for a second. So we went through and looked at these responses. So we did 7-day tests, which is, the state requires 32 hours. We did 7-day long tests. And so what we do is we look at these diagnostic plots of groundwater flow. And so groundwater flow follows governing equations. So radial flow, this is the red line is what the typical radial flow, confined flow system would look like. It's called the Tice-type curve. And so that's what you use to look at it. So here under well number 1, what we're looking for is boundaries. So this would be if you'd never hit a boundary, it was water's coming in everywhere the same. It would follow this line right here, the drawdown. You can see here, it starts to depart from that line. And so here in well 1, we did see a boundary response. And you can see it here. This is a specialized plot, which is a semi-logarithmic plot of drawdown versus the elapsed time. And so a straight line on that shows as radial flow. And so you can see here at about, 800 minutes-ish or so, we hit a boundary. But then after that, we follow that boundary all the way up. It stays on that same Tice-type curve.
You might define what radial flow is.
So radial flow and infinite acting radial flow is when you have water and aquifer that flows radially from all directions towards the wellbore. And so you basically, like in an unconfined aquifer, you've got water draining to that well plane in all different directions. And confined one, you're basically got the same thing. It's just that you're reducing pressures around the wellhead. So basically have radial flow all the way around. When you see there, well, there's that flow, and then there's another type of flow called linear flow where water is basically linearly coming in through like a fracture set or whatever. When you see radial flow like this, you're seeing drainage from the pores and most likely from the fracture set also. So you have a larger storage volume than if you have a linear flow where you're just have water running through like a linear feature, like a large fracture or whatever. And when you get into linear flow equations, it's really difficult to feel as comfortable about longevity of a well, just because it's working on less storage, and it's not following like a governing equation for groundwater flow like TICE is, or a confined radial flow. So here, this is just basically showing that we've got flow coming in all directions. We hit a boundary here, which could be that we reached out to a point where the aquifer is either no longer there, it's been eroded away, gone, or it's exposed at the surface. So now drawdown increases a little bit because you have to have water coming in from more areas to sustain the volume or flow rate to that well bore. Here, what I was also thinking that this may be is that you start with the radial flow curve here, where you basically have thought or so fractured up there that you have radial flow coming in through the fracture set first. And that's at a higher rate. And then as the water drains out of the fracture set, then you start getting water that comes in to the fracture set from the host rock, from the rock itself. So now you've got water that's in the pores or the empty voids in the rock that's draining into those fractures. And that's going to be at a lower rate because you're draining water out of the rock itself, I guess. But so normally you may not see this in an aquifer that wouldn't be fractured like that. That was the only well we saw that boundary was in well 1 and well 2. We did not see any boundary, just follow the TICE type curve. This first bit, the reason it's offset like that is that you can see this is a 1-to-1 slope basically on here. And that just shows it when the first turn on the well pump, the well pump's providing the storage in the well bore is providing water, and then it transitions into getting water from the aquifer. That's well bore storage is what that's called. And then MFM3, we actually hit the opposite of that. And so here we're following along this TICE type curve again for confined radial flow. And you can see here it departs from that and heads below it, which means we hit some form of a recharge boundary. So that could be that it's reached out and we're actually seeing drainage from the surface water source. That could be where we intersected a larger fracture in a set out there, or we're getting leakage from another aquifer into that aquifer. And I'm going to say this is most likely leakage because when this starts here, you can see below that we're actually observing drawdown in the other well. So I think you can see leakage in between the two aquifers there. And so this would show that we're actually getting less drawdown than we should at this rate instead of more.
Well, at least my question is up in Aspen Groves. When the Spanish Peaks wells went in over at the Horseshoe, people above us in Spanish Peaks North found their wells running dry. And our two wells in Aspen Groves started pulling up bentonite. So
Bentonite.
yeah.
If they just wait to cloudy water.
Yeah, suspended bentonite.
So how do you determine if that's going to happen in these wells long term? I'm not talking about that short term drawdown and recharge, but if that whole aquifer is not recharging over time, it's somewhat closed. How do you determine that ahead of time that you're not going to you know, 2 years down the road or a year down the road, all of a sudden not have water.
We do, that's what he's talking about, having the wells monitored to do the static and drawdown. So we would read those
But you'd have to,
on a regular
you'd
basis.
have to have those running.
Not on a static is off. So you get your water level when this pump is off.
You know,
I did this quite a bit in Hayes because that's how we triggered our drought and restrictions was the health of the well. So we had actually a picture, so all of our static readings went in and gave us the depths of that well. And then your drawdown is how much you pump down when you're pumping. So through those two measurements, we can tell
okay.
what's
But you
going
have
on.
to do that for a long period of time.
Constantly, yeah, we'd be doing it all the time, weekly usually. Unless you got equipment in there that automatically does it for you, and then you can go read it.
And then one of the other things we did here is we also had long-term monitoring, so we were monitoring over 3 months time, and during that time, we didn't see effects on the aquifer from other wells. So we didn't see, like, a lot of times you'll see, you know, in an aquifer, you'll see pumps, basically well interference from other well fields or other wells surrounding, and we didn't see any of that here. So we didn't see, there was no effect from other well fields on the aquifer at the location where we're at. So we weren't seeing like the Spanish Peaks wells turning on and off, or Yellowstone wells turning on and off, or the Mountain Village wells turning on and off. And so since we're not seeing them affect us, when we turn on, we shouldn't have an effect on them either. And then when we monitored the drawdown and recovery, and so then we wanted to make sure that the drawdown and residual drawdown was what, so when you turn on the pump off, you've drawn down the water in the aquifer, and then we measure the recovery, which is the residual drawdown coming back. And so if you don't see a recovery, well, it would slowly deplete, like you were saying, to nothing, right? And that would be more of a tank type response. But here, we did not see that.
Can you factor in that 2-to-1 ratio as well, correct?
Yeah,
That
and so that allows.
resting it to that ratio.
Mhm.
And we went through this
You
on
might have to go to a
Cascade,
higher ratio.
Cascade 5 and 6. Original pump tests concluded big water, big pumps, all this stuff, 400 gallon a minute wells. We later came in and did a 7-day test, similar to what we did on the West Fork wells. Mark's conclusion after doing that was, hey, these aquifers really can't sustain 400 gallons a minute. So he kind of reset the whole well design, the well yields based on a longer pump test. Because these, again, these are confined aquifer bedrock wells that have boundary conditions that you didn't see until you did a 7-day pump test.
And then that triggered a kind of a 3-to-1 rest. It was
Right.
3 months of pumping
Exactly.
or snow making, and then you needed 9 months of rest. So that's where that has to factor in,
Right.
and that can fluctuate.
Yeah, and then back to the radio. So all the meadow wells, the 5 wells we have here are sitting in alluvial gravel aquifer exposed to the surface. And flow is from all directions on all 5 of our wells. The vines that Pat's showing here are comparable to the whole Meadow Village aquifer. Our 5 wells.
And when we first looked at this well, you know, one of the things we did look at was where we thought our sources of recharge were. And here, you know, you've got completely exposed upstream of where we're at in the well. So you probably have some surface recharge, and then you have up in the Beehive Basin, there's some Kootenai up there, so that'd be snow melt precip that goes in there. And then it's really all along Bucks Ridge is all exposed Kootenai, and so all the snow melt and precipitation goes in through there. So you've got at least 3 different areas that I think are a source for recharge in this area.
Like that yellow middle area.
Yeah, above. And so I guess that's what we did. Yeah, we would basically, where's our source of recharge? We watched our residual drawdowns, we limited our total flow rate to that 120 days or total volume, not the flow rate itself. And then, and then we looked at, are we actually seeing facts from other users? Is this aquifer being tapped out? Is it not being tapped out? And if you look back in between, like when they were drilled, and then when Jim Potts was doing his testing and we're doing our testing, and the heads and the wells haven't changed throughout those times.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. Yes. That's all I know. I can answer other questions if you have them.
Questions? It's promising.
It is. And Jim did prepare that TW9 report, did review it. I gave him all the samples, so he owns all those samples now. I gave him a log because I logged the bottom part of it. He nicely put my name on top of it, but he was the main author on that.
All right.
And he did, I guess I'll just let you know, he did review this, so I had two people do editorial kind of reviews, in-house engineers, and another geologist, Dean there, Snyder, who works in my office, and then did give it to Jim Potts, and he reviewed it, gave me some very good review, and also Michael reviewed it.
That's the completed report right there. This pretty much everything buttoned up.
Except your well numbers.
My well numbers, I'm gonna go ahead and readjust those well numbers and send those back. I can't.
So one page will change.
One page will change, and then this is the short. The only difference between this and the one that you guys have is that this one here in my hand doesn't have all the water quality in it, but. So you do have water quality through all of Jim's testing originally, and then this one too, that we didn't go back and do all of the testing for the VOCs and the SOCs during this round, but they were done the first time. So at the end of the day, when they get put online, that you will have to do a full suite again anyways. 3 years. But water quality all looks great, except for the iron and manganese. So I have, thank you.
Great, thank you. Thanks for coming down.
Thanks, Pat. Thank you, sir. Thank you for all the time. That was a lot.
All right,
It was a very interesting
the
project.
main attraction.
It was.
Thanks, man.
Susan, do we still have it?
As much as you ever do.
All right. We do have a legal category under old business. Any updates?
Brian, before we go to that, a thing that keeps going through my head is what happens now? We've got that information. What are the next steps?
I think it had, first of all, I think that was a major first step. I mean, there was a widespread there, and it's not a criticism. People were saying they have next to nothing down there. And then we said, well, you can prove what you have. That's a big step to say, what do you come to the table with? I just did a rough calculation based on 117 gallons per day. Now on the water, forget the 107 and this and that. That's a big source down there. You're pushing, 3,000 SFEs of water in that area. But this is the very first time that we can confirm the representations. That's just the first step. Now we start talking about it from an obligation side of things for what the district has for the obligation for Flatiron and that resource and how that plays into it.
So I'm gonna assume we're probably gonna be scheduling some sort of Flatiron committee meetings.
Okay.
I think there's still, I mean, again, I don't have an opinion on it, and Susan, maybe you can chime in if there is something I'm missing, but again, it was confirm your representation. I think you check that box today, unless anybody says, I don't know, this was sketchy, but if that, after a whole summer and into the fall, they've confirmed the resource. Now it's a question, what is the obligation and how does this resource play into the obligation? And, and in the past, I think the numbers have been batted around, you know, let's say it's 850 SFEs. I think there was an interpretation that the district only had to provide X amount of water for those 850. How does it all play together? Step one.
Well, I think your
Big step though.
start point is we went on record saying the Spanish Peak's obligation for sewer capacity has always been 38 million gallons per year annually. We also recognize that with that goes water capacity, water source for that build out. It's all in Gallatin County, what's in our district, the remainder of the Lone Moose.
You're talking about the Yellowstone Club 2002 agreement.
Right.
Correct. I just want to be clear.
But that was,
People get confused with the Spanish Peaks because
yeah.
they have their own water and that's where this came into play.
but the Spanish Peaks agreements was moot on water supply, put forward a wastewater. We later came in, I think it was last year.
Yeah.
Said, no, they're in our service area. We will provide water for that build out, all of which is in the Gallatin side, in our district. So I think that's your starting point.
For us to provide water for the 850 SFEs, we need source. Just how do those two dovetail?
And the other thing I think that's important in the big picture and marks the same 2022 capacity update. He says you're good about 2032 for the meadow and then your lines cross. And then you're good to about 2038, 2040 on the mountain village. Well, if you introduce supply mid-mountain like that, you have the ability to offload water down to the meadow. So that pushes out your meadow curve way into the future.
But to remind everyone, this isn't a water supply we're anticipating to go to the mountain. It would relieve pressure from the mountain.
Correct.
Especially in those critical months in the summer when you have that ratio. So this is not a resource for the mountain, it relieves it for the mountain.
But you're right, it helps
Goes
you
to
on
the meadow,
that.
goes everything downhill.
Your pinch point is the meadow.
Yeah.
According to Mark's work.
Yeah.
And this helps that.
And this relieves that pressure.
Yeah. Potential.
Good summary.
Chris, anything else you have to add?
No.
Long awaited.
I know.
Okay,
Do the plans in the meadow from Lone Mountain Land Company for additional wells tapping an aquifer, do they impact any of our existing wells?
Well,
We looked at that.
the one that's front and center is they're lining up to pump test the well that was drilled in 2000, the south end of section 1. Simpkins drilled that years ago. They were talking about some development across the south one. They drilled that well, did not get their water rights approved on that. The DNRC shot them down at their hearings in 2002. Lone Mountain Land owns that now, and so they're gonna move a rig in to pump test that. And they also plan to do 2 test wells down in that coal smoke area. Geology is different though, so all bets are up. Yeah, all
We
bets.
don't see an impact across on our sources.
No,
but they'll confirm that with some pump testing then, I guess.
right,
Yeah.
you should.
So that's that.
To get water rights for the.
But that's, I think, a muddy formation well, south end of section 1. All our stuff here is this alluvial aquifer stuff, so you really shouldn't see an impact.
What's that? No, it's good. These are great. By the way, that's a great question. I wasn't even thinking that. I was so focused on Flatiron in this discussion, but you're gonna be pump testing wells adjacent to our, you got to make sure that we're not deteriorating. So.
And let me ask one more question on what Dick just said, because it made me think of it, but should we then be anticipating them coming in and asking if they can find water to use?
You got the same problems, exact.
Yeah, because
You're reading the playbook. That is the playbook right there.
And it's It's a little gray on some of these topics. It's just a little gray. It's all about source.
I like to scout.
You hold the paper to everything. Those water right by.
Yeah.
You are the driver.
This meeting's kind of tying everything together. Ron's presentation, this presentation, and of course, the most important update would be with Susan. Anything that we're missing there? Are we on the right path?
You are absolutely on the right path.
Yeah.
Huge step forward. I think you've quantified where we are and Ron's where we are, and then we got it where we're going to start from to get to resolution.
All right. It was actually faster than I thought. I think we're on track for your deadline. So bring muffins if we get this in at 11 next time. Okay. Anyway, thank you there. Appreciate it. All right. We got legal out of the way then. Covered the MDEQ flow deviation. We're going to have some annexation petitions that are going to come along later, but the next topic is new development and subdivision. This is Cold Smoke Housing Trust. And this is new business. Yep. And I don't see anyone else here to present or.
No, it's, I told them that I would bring this up, so kind of tease them up for when Crater Bancroft and David O'Connor with the Housing Trust. So they met with Ron and I and Vince and Jake. And kind of, this is their tentative proposal. It has 400 units that they're looking at, some of it affordable housing, condos, single family homes, stuff like that. Right now, they're working on some water exploration. We met with them, kind of talked geology with their geologist and Ron. So I anticipate that they're going to want to present their full proposal here in the next few months. They wanted to do it now, but I told them we weren't quite ready and had all that information, but I wanted to give everybody kind of a high overview on what was coming with Cold Smoke and the Housing Trust. Right now, we're doing the capacity and everything that the Housing Trust has. You know, they're allocated 600. I believe they're going to use roughly 100 for the housing that's over here and stuff. So they're partnering up with this to create some affordable housing and using the rest of their SFEs for that.
So this is a preliminary annexation application that's coming down the line.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just double checking. Is Mike Duke on? No, you know. Oh, I think he's in for a long meeting in Bozeman today.
You were planning to be at that meeting too.
No.
Oh, I thought you said you couldn't. Okay.
That was no different ballgame.
That's a totally different ballgame.
Don't dabble in that too much.
That's one you didn't really want to go to. No. So that's what this is. I just want to make sure everybody in the room, they're looking up going, okay, what is this? This is basically a preliminary.
Preliminary, it's been a goal of Vince and I to start getting at the head of the table. So we're, we can give influence and talk and, have stuff coming way before it shows up at our doorstep and we're catching up. So this is one of those first steps where we're, way out. We've discussed and had discussions with them, kind of seeing what they're looking at. They asked for the petition and, we kind of gone over that and the criteria is for that. So, it's not, by the time this does come to the board, it will be fully vetted and have all the I's dotted and the T's crossed and stuff. So.
What's the name of this development?
Cold Smoke.
Cold Smoke.
Being cold smoke for now, yeah.
Would the beer let them use that?
They'll probably challenge.
We'll see.
Must be a favor to your Shrop.
Can someone remind me, how many units are in Riverview total?
I know it's 100 SFEs, but I was
100
wondering the same thing.
SFEs, there's, I don't know how many units off the top of my head. There's what, 4 or 5 buildings over there? 5, yeah, maybe. Housing Trust has 2, and I heard that Not land was maybe giving them another building to use.
I'm pretty sure it's 100 SFEs. You do the math on the pillow basis and the 1.25 per 1,000 square feet. So
With all this stuff coming out,
I
it's
don't try to
really,
do it in my head.
really good we have a full staff.
Oh, yeah. Because
Including,
we have
including
Terry and I and Ron and everybody, we kind of really been filling the pinch.
all the guys. And
Yeah.
I think this is Amy and Lindsay's
Yep.
second day,
First day.
first day.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Well, welcome for first day after introduction of the last meeting.
So I think we need to have a full staff
Yeah.
here ready to get the fire hose treatment with all these developments, annexations.
It's gonna be a common thread between these annexations. That's the key. We just gotta
Yeah.
now get a checklist we go through. Okay. Any questions for Johnny then on this part of that you probably can't answer, but we'll.
Yeah, this is very high level preliminary, stuff, you know, with anything, they're subject to change on whatever they're doing on their due diligence and everything like that. But I do anticipate them, coming in. I don't know, they're doing May, I think they're open for some drilling over there and doing some water exploration and all that stuff, so. They get that done and get that through, so maybe June, possibly.
But that's already underway, correct? The test wells are underway on that's on the screen.
Schedule,
It's scheduled.
Okay,
not, the rig's not here.
got it.
And when you say coming in, you're saying coming in with an annexation request?
Yeah.
Because if I remember correctly, we don't opine on the use of those SFPs. That's the housing
Yes.
trust decision.
Yep.
And how they're allocated.
So all of Riverview is on the housing trust.
I don't believe all of it is, I think it's just a portion of it.
Two of the buildings, so
Just 2 buildings, I believe.
Oh, those, okay, and then the other.
Yeah.
Five are-
Which two?
they're color delineated out there if you want to know on your lead.
Yeah.
The tan buildings.
These two right here.
But the others are affordable housing or dormitory housing, but not in the 500
No,
or 600.
yeah, this is workforce housing.
Well, wait a minute, just to be clear, that corridor is all from the workforce housing SFEs.
Correct.
What you have is a 75-25 split. You had 100 SFEs go out. 25 went to the housing trust. Correct me if I'm wrong on any of this.
They haven't pulled permits yet.
Okay,
So
That was
the original takeoffs were about 100, and that'll get fully finalized as they come in with their permits. We'll sit down with them and go through all that, but we did takeoffs over a year ago on that.
the idea was that the housing trust, and again, this is what was presented, and I want to confirm it, was the 25 SFEs were through the housing trust
Yes,
based on AMI and everything else that goes with it. The other 75 would be workforce housing. And it's apparent they're all in a workforce row, and you can see it here on the planning side. Workforce, but not under the same conditions necessarily of the housing trust.
right.
So,
So we put 500 on the table originally. That got amended to 600 when we increased our SFEs for workforce housing units from 1 to 1.2 per 1,000 square feet. The burn on that has only been in Powder Light so far, and they used 13 and change, so there's 587 or so.
But we know Riverview is gonna come from that one.
Exactly. So and then anything that would happen in here sounds like it would be in that purview for housing trust, workforce housing from that pool.
An obvious question is whether it's a similar structure, but that's probably premature.
Yeah.
To ask you that.
Yeah, no, that'd be for David and.
Sorry.
Right.
Great.
Five or different ratio.
Yeah.
at least we won't be in shock when we see this in the paper. So that's good. Preliminary is always good, but it's also aligned with three other annexation requests that are on the, or I'm sorry, this is the third one that I know of that's on the table. So it's actually good timing to get everything, that checklist going, the legal opinion. I think the biggest thing with it is how we handle that annexation request, whether it goes to ratepayer vote or if we have the opportunity to go through a board resolution by the board for ordinance amendment, correct? And that would need the legal opinion based on, do we have surplus capacity? And the definition of surplus capacity at the time. And that's where we're at. So it's gonna be a similar checklist for each one of these.
Which goes back to the 80 or 90 that you were. Essentially. So.
And I think it also times out potentially, I know Susan's working on it, I don't want to speak for her, but the idea is the surplus capacity today with liquids, or is it November 1st with solids? So it's just, the good news is we're on a parallel path with a number of different entities from the legal side, you, Scott, is so important. And then of course the board. Yeah. So it's really good they're coming through at the same time. Yeah. And then we can look at this in a comprehensive picture. Anything else in this? That's all I got at this time. Thank David and the crew for putting it in front of us so that at least we start thinking about it, how this is going to work. We can come up with some Q&A for the future.
Kristen is here. I'm still a little bit of Earth Thunder. She sent out an email the other day, but we are hosting. Oops. I didn't mean to do that. Oh, stop it. DEQ will be having a meeting.
I just want to stay in sequence in case everybody's on for it. You had sewer and water connection permits.
Yeah, we've only had a couple of remodels.
That's it.
Yeah.
Boy, I'd like to see this trend line compared to other years right now. Wow, this one has just dropped off the face.
Yeah, we just, we got to get a capacity letter for the Spanish Peaks Fire Station. Everything so far has been remodels. No expansion for SFEs. I did get one yesterday. I haven't looked through. The only other one that we got that's still in preliminary is the Wilson Annex.
Dick, it's got to be an all-timer for both you and Shrop. I mean, this is when it was hitting the power curve up and it's actually dropping off. Maybe May will be big. Maybe I just want to kind of track that. Make sure if there's anything we need to do or we can adjust for some of our.
Or put in a permit when you can't get anybody to build.
Take it easy on the builders. We have one in the back. Okay. We have a candidate in the back, by the way.
It is one of the remodels. I just went over that with them yesterday. So
there he is. All right, and just to, again, to stay on track, not to take more time for Kristen, General Correspondence District Candidate Forum. When is that?
Yeah.
Maybe put it on somebody on the schedule. It'd be good to show us.
Yeah, I plan on being there.
I
I plan on being there because, they're being asked questions. It's already time limit and all that stuff. So should be fun next week.
So it'll be, the election is before our next meeting.
Yeah.
So we'll have a new board member for our next meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
Just true.
Or two.
All right. More importantly, make sure everybody gets out and votes.
Yep, it's a mail-in ballot, so.
Or I should say,
Send in your mail-in ballot.
I think half of Big Sky was gone last week, so everybody reminder and.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So this is the 22nd and 6 p.m. The agenda's here. They'll be talking about the impairment on the Gallatin River. So we are hosting it. I plan on being here. I'm sure Kristen will be here. Be interesting to see what they have to say because it's the whole river from up here all the way down to Spanish Creek, right?
Right, yeah.
So that's the biggest thing coming up. And then, I think we got Jess here to give everybody an update on partnership.
Thank you. All right. Hi, everyone. I think I've met all of you by now, but I'm Jess Wilson. I'm the conservation manager with the Gallatin River Task Force. I run our water conservation program and just wanted to give you all an update on what we've been doing this last year, what we're looking to looking forward to, and just a thank you for all of your support in our program, for funding it and being such an active partner. And so these first few slides, I'm sure you're all familiar with, but some background on the program. Water conservation has been identified as a top priority during the creation of the Big Sky Area Sustainable Watershed Stewardship Plan, or the Water Plan. And it very recently went under its 5-year review, and water conservation continues to be a priority. And of the initiatives taken out of those meetings, there's a lot of infrastructure, stormwater, purple pipe, all of those projects, but there's still definitely a need for a community-run water conservation program, because saving water and stretching our water supply really comes from a community level and getting everyone involved. And so the sewer district, I know, was a part of those meetings, both at its creation and this last round of updates. And not just for those of us in the water world, water is a priority for the whole community. BSRAD had identified water conservation as a priority in their vision and strategy, and recently created a SMART goal for the community to save 600,000 gallons of water annually by 2027, which is a lofty goal and one that we're working toward. So it's not just us that cares about water, it's the whole community and really Montana as a whole. This isn't an issue related to Big Sky specifically. In developing our program, we try our best to use as much relevant and updated data as we can. And over the last few years, several reports have come out that have really helped us narrow down our program and identify the best solutions. The most recent is this report from the Montana Drought Management Plan. It was created by the DNRC. This is a map just outlining the frequency of drought seen in each county over the last 20, I think it was 22 years. And as you can see, Madison and Gallatin County have been in a state of at least D2 or higher drought for quite some time. D2, for reference, is severe drought. That's where we're currently at, where we have been for a few months now. We also understand from reports from the Bureau of Mines and Geology and BSOA's capacity update, we know that snowmelt is the most significant source of recharge for our aquifer. We know from the Greater Yellowstone Climate Assessment that we are expecting to see less snow in the coming years. They're expecting up to 43% loss, I believe, is what they stated. So we know that we're losing quite a bit of our water supply, and with our growing population, we are struggling to preserve it. So we thank you and all of these other stakeholders who have released these reports, and these have really helped guide our program in the direction that we're heading. To bring it back locally, the Water Conservation Program was established by the task force in 2016 as a result of concerns for this growing population. We cover Big Sky and Gallatin Canyon, and we really focus more on the demand side. So we want to help lower that water demand for the water providers, mostly through community outreach, to get your customers and other customers to upgrade their fixtures, lower their water use, and be more educated in terms of drought and what our water supply means. Generally, water conservation programs are run out of a municipality, but Big Sky's unique case, we have so many water providers that it makes the most sense for us to organize it under one umbrella. This chart here is a little outdated, but it still does show you how many providers and how many different wells are within our community, which is not really all that typical for a community of our size. That graph came out of the Big Sky Water Conservation and Drought Management Plan, which was developed in 2002. And we've been using that as a guide to prioritize our initiatives and determine the best avenues for water conservation. Again, to reference all of the great infrastructure updates that are being made in our community, we do still know that conservation is effective and one of the most cost-efficient ways of stretching water supplies. Water conservation programs are very common throughout the Western United States. There's over 200 water saving rebate programs in this part of the country, and that's just from the EPA. There could be, or that's just ones that are associated with the EPA. There could be many more. Our program itself, since its conception, has saved close to 12 million gallons of water, but while we are proud of that number, there's still a long way to go, and there's still a lot that can be done in order to increase that number, and especially to reach that 600,000 gallons goal that we have set with BSRAD. I also want to commend you all, the Water Sewer District, for your work in helping to save our water supply. Your really robust leak detection and metering has really helped us understand where water is being wasted, where it's coming from, and where we can best tackle water conservation issues. Even just anecdotally, while I've been out tabling and promoting our water conservation program, we've heard plenty of things from your customers of how much they appreciate the billing system and being able to just log on and see where their water use is. It's a great asset for the community. We are also super appreciative of the Bureau of Reclamation Water Smart Grant that you helped sponsor us for. For background, the BOR offers what they call small scale efficiency grants for water conservation programs. And in order to be eligible, you either have to be a water provider or partnered with one. And so the district helped sponsor us so that we could apply for $100,000 to help upgrade landscapes. So to help get people to remove their turf, to upgrade to water-wise landscapes. We won't hear back for another few months on that funding, but we are optimistic. A quick overview of our budget. Our program has operated roughly in the 140K range over the last several years. This coming fiscal year is a little bit higher just due to that BOR grant. It's the largest grant that we've gone for this program. Resort tax typically funds roughly half of that, and then other funding coming from smaller grants, individual donations to the task force, and then the Water Sewer District. This last year, you had offered 8,000 to us, which we're super grateful for, and hope that as you're reviewing your budgets in the next couple of meetings that you'll consider continuing to fund us. It's been a huge asset and a huge help to us, and we really appreciate your offer of the program. Most of these expenses go towards marketing and outreach. As a nonprofit, we don't have the regulatory ability over your customers, but we can provide as much education as we can to get them to be motivated for water conservation and participate in our programs. Other funds go towards the rebates, where we're giving cash back for people upgrading their fixtures or participating in water saving practices, and then other special projects that I'll go into a little bit here. In the creation of the drought management plan, we categorized all of our initiatives into these 3 buckets to help us prioritize and make sure that year to year we're tackling as much of the community as we can and really spreading out our reach on the community. Outreach being one of the biggest, because again, being a voluntary program, we really rely on outreach to get people involved in our program. Rebates and incentives, those are that financial motivators, giving people money for upgrading their toilets, their landscapes, and just educating on what they could be saving in terms of water bills and energy bills. Advocacy and partnerships is a space that we're trying to move more into, knowing that, again, while we don't have that regulatory power, other people do, and if we partner with districts, the water districts, and other water providers, HOAs, we can help make change at a policy level for our community. This past year, some initiatives I'm happy to share. We officially launched our drought dashboard, which was identified in the water conservation plan. This is on our website, and it is a tool that is meant to inform folks what stage of drought we're in and what that means for our community and what they can do to help mitigate the impacts of drought. We got some recent website analytics and found that it's one of the most visited pages on our website right now, which we're really excited to hear. It means that people are using it, and it means that people care. And we also have designed these flyers, which you can see here. These will be going out in EBS every 2 weeks with current drought status, a summary of what that means, and a link to the drought page. We also, again, applied for that Water Smart grant, and we are making upgrades, or have been making upgrades to the rebate program. We've received a lot of feedback from the community of our rebate program and where it lacks and why people aren't participating in it. And so based on that feedback, we have been upgrading it to better match what people need. So this includes increasing the amounts because we just weren't offering enough. It wasn't enough of an incentive. We'll be offering more one-on-one help in the near future because people, especially when it comes to landscapes, it's a big daunting process and money isn't enough of a motivator. They need more one-on-one assistance and more guides to actually make that happen. For advocacy and partnerships, we have formally launched Alpinscapes, which this time last year was just known as the Big Sky Landscaping Partnership. And it was 4 groups, the task force, Grow Wild, the Sustainability Network Organization, and the fire department. All 4 of us had different landscaping programs under our different scopes. So for us, we're focusing on water, the fire department on firewise, et cetera. And we found that it's silly to have 4 different programs running in Big Sky, so we've combined Create Alpinscapes. The goal to be to get folks to upgrade their landscapes to encompass all of our missions and make it a little bit easier. So it'll be a hub of information. So that's been a really fun process. We have our website now live, alpinscapes.org. Currently, it's just a landing page, but we are working on creating content to get up on the website, which will include plant lists, irrigation guides. So we are working with some landscape architects to put together sample landscape designs for people to help make the most out of their landscape. We've also been participating in a county-wide drought planning effort. Gallatin County and the Gallatin Water Collaborative are working on a Gallatin County drought management plan, which the task force has been sitting in on those working groups and actively participating in that process. Right now, we're looking for funding to fund the creation of the plan and looking at contractors to actually make the plan happen. So more on that this coming year, and we're really excited to see that happen and more drought plans for us to be able to work under. Moving forward, based on all of that feedback that we've gotten from the community and from all of these new reports that are coming out, we're really pushing our next few initiatives to help better fit the needs of the community. So we'll be working on a water conservation toolkit. So these will be individual toolkits to give to individual sectors such as restaurants, hotels, different industries that are really targeted towards them so that they can implement best practices into their specific industry in regards to water. Again, we'll be launching those more formal outdoor rebate programs, one-on-one visits, offering more incentive. And we're also working with the city of Bozeman to get our staff trained in running commercial audits, so that we'll be able to go into commercial spaces and give them more one-on-one guidance on how to make their businesses more water wise. The future of Alpinscapes, again, right now we just have a landing page on our website, but we're working on creating those guides. We'll be coming up with events and more outreach materials to get folks engaged in Alpinscapes. A Big Sky water provider partnership. We have noticed through other communities throughout the Arid West that a lot of communities are partnering, bringing their water providers together, and we're really hoping that this is something that we can move forward with this coming year. Because even though the task force, we happily run this program, we really need all the water providers on board, not just you all, in order to help spread this message throughout our community. So we want to be able to work with the major providers to help streamline messaging, help having it come from multiple angles is much more motivating to customers, and tying the program more strictly to the providers rather than just having it run out of the task force. We've also been watching Envision Gallatin. If you haven't heard of this, they are creating the future land use map. We've been encouraging our supporters to get involved, and we strongly encourage you to get involved if not already, which is they're making a map essentially to help guide development. So they'll be looking at housing strategies, growth policies, ecological impacts, water, to help best guide development within Gallatin County, which is much needed. Their first round of comment has now closed, but they'll be opening a second round. They expect end of summer, early fall. And with that, I'm happy to take questions if anyone has any, or here's my contact information. And thank you again for funding the program, supporting the program, and being such great partners. It's really a pleasure to be able to work with all of you all.
Landscape program's great. I'll be calling.
We're excited.
I mean, it's good looking landscaping, and then in hearing that ratio that we're talking about, that's an area for improvement.
Oh, absolutely. And we got that from you from that source capacity update, really just hammered how important that is. And we've already gotten some calls from Wilcynski, so people want to get involved, so we're ready to hit the ground running.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to see you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
What's the name of your organization?
Gallatin River Task Force,
What?
Gallatin River Task Force. So we're based here in Big Sky and we focus on the upper Gallatin watershed.
All right, May 21st. Everybody on board?
Oh, meeting ends. Well, try and phone in from Sicily.
I was just thinking, how many hour difference in time? It'll be cocktail hour, whatever hour it is. It's just
4 o'clock in the afternoon,
got it.
cocktail.
There'll be some wine, okay. Everybody can make it though? So we don't have to make any modifications? All right. Any other business? Anything when we have everybody here? Again, welcome, second day team members. That's great. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn, okay. You don't have to second it, do you? Okay, I'll take a second. Mike for second. All in favor, we're adjourned. Oh, we haven't adjourned. I'm gonna withdraw that. Susan, are you still on?
Yes, so fearless leader.
Yeah, thank you very much.
This sounds.
Yeah, there was a little confusion in regular meeting. We are still in regular meeting. And I believe everyone received Ron's email yesterday. And we're up for discussion on it in open session.
Thanks. I have hard copies if anybody needs one, but I worked on this over the weekend, sent it out yesterday. And one reason I wanted to do this in open session is because I get asked a lot, when are you done? When are you done? And I can vouch for that. And he can vouch for that. And so I got asked today when I walked in here again, but so my intent here is to put that in writing. You know, I think I've been pretty consistent on my retirement plan coinciding with when we're done with the treatment plant project. I think Scott did a good job kind of framing the effort that's gone into this project. It's the biggest, best one I've ever done in my career here. So yeah, I'd like to see it through to its end game. So over time, I'm backing off a lot of the regular meetings that I normally would sit in on. I think Johnny's covering all of those with except one, and that's the construction meetings that happen weekly. I think we're on 113 or something meetings we've done as we built this plant. Johnny sits on that meeting as well, so we're both there. But all the other stuff, I'm pumping the brakes on. So I kind of outlined my intent to stick around till the plant's done. And I also went through the list that Johnny had put into the meeting last month, kind of his recommendations on some of these tasks that we want to get done in my remaining time here. So I basically put forward that I'd be done after the last board meeting in December. I'm not going to work into Christmas. You know, work to mid-December. We should be done with the plant. If there's some loose ends, that's fine, but I want to spend more time down in the plant as we get into startup. And for me, this is the fun part of the project. You know, when you walk around that plant now, it looks like a wastewater treatment plant. So it's all starting to come together. And it's culmination of 29 years here. You're going to have a great new asset to take care of Big Sky for a long time with this thing. So I went through, just made some notes. I'm not gonna read all this. You guys have it. Address this time off thing. I'll meet with Terry on that because I definitely have some questions on that. We're not gonna belabor that. So this was Johnny's outline of the kind of the work plan. I think it's a good outline. So the bold stuff are my responses to each. There's some big buckets of tasks here as far as the records cleanup. We've started scanning all our files. What triggered that was the lawsuit with Cottonwood Law. We took 5 boxes of discovery to Allegra and Bozeman. They charged me $2,000 to do 5 crappy boxes of files. So Vince and I got together and said, we can do better than this. So we bought some really good scanners, started scanning all our files. So that all needs to be organized now. And Amy will be working with that, Lindsay some as well. They've got training to do on Black Mountain, Water Smart, all these platforms we use are fixed-based billing. I can help with all of that. Terry will be front and center for the Black Mountain billing, and I think that's the start point, isn't it, Terry?
Yep, that is a.
Both of them, yeah. I don't know how much time that all will take, but there's a lot of stuff in that platform that they'll be getting up to speed with. The plats, I know both of them come from real estate offices, so they've got a lot of experience dealing with plats and land records, but I'm thinking we'll go to the clerk and recorder's offices. In person, Virginia City, Gallatin County, meet with Eric Semerod, talking about elections in general. We'll meet with Susan Swinley to talk about sewer and water district elections. I already spoke to the records and cleanup budgets. I'm not involved at this point. That Johnny and our superintendents, Terry, are doing the budget work for the next fiscal year. And I'm totally fine with that. Yeah, here's where he talked about the wastewater plant project. The Spanish Peaks, town center stuff, I think that's mostly done. I've met with Mac Harrison, their expert. Mac's done a lot of work and I've sat with him through his work sessions on looking at flows, first and fourth quarter water usage data to get some idea of sewer flows from town center, Spanish Peaks. So that's mostly done. Spoke to the BSO, BSCO, SFE.
Yeah.
Big Sky community.
Most people in the community.
There was a big question, kind of how many SFEs they got left, and that was a very complicated agreement project because it involved a land trade. We did a boundary line adjustment to move the boundary to the west so we could build the plant we're building now. In exchange for that, we gave them SFEs for the base project. The Simpkins family gave them 7 SFEs out of their exempt pool. So there were 40 SFEs in the agreement, 26 or so got chewed, or yeah, I think it was 26, chewed up in the permit for bays. So that, and they got the parcel below the tennis courts. So they had 12 SFEs there. So I wrote a history on this whole thing.
She's gonna say it.
And so the agreement was one piece of that, but it doesn't tell the whole story. So to answer all the questions from Whitney and his staff and our staff, I put together a historical memo on the whole project, and I think that solved a bunch of headaches.
Well, it solved everything, so
Yeah.
it got us.
Think you were able to
It was a very nice
I
stuff.
think you were able to cancel your meeting. The water rights work, I spoke to that earlier. I think that's a great project. We had a great kickoff meeting. This one, I think the only one that came to my mind was the contractual right for the use of water for snowmaking on the.
Yeah, that's the one that popped up, just making sure
Okay.
nothing else is lingering out there that, we don't know about, because us new people, we're only gonna go back so far in history, and it's just making sure we're we're aware of stuff and know what stuff is, so we know what to include in all of our updates and resets and making sure we have it.
Right. And it's a fair comment because there are a lot of agreements that are around this place and there have been. And so it's, you know, how do you sit, pound through all of that in one day, you know? And so that's the one I thought you were talking about. The water rights folders, there's one more, Jake, I haven't given you that's in the file cabinet. Lucky you. But you've got all the stuff in your office, and I'll leave it up to you and Johnny and who holds those files over time. Okay, there's your answer. Infrastructure operation. Again, I'd like to kind of shift down to the plant more, work with Adam and his crew down there on the startup. One of my favorite meetings over time has been the irrigator meetings, and I'm gonna stop going to those. I think Adam is ready. Johnny can pop into those if he wants. And then he had,
I'd recommend you go to those. Yeah, I'm gonna even do a victory lap on those. I don't know if Mike Dick and I will do them anymore, but we always had fun at those.
we're looking really good right now. If you look at the pond levels right now, they're as low as we typically see this time of year. So we're, I think, I'm not spiking the football yet either, Scott.
It's probably one of the most successful partnerships that's ever evolved between Cross Harbor, Lomond, and all of us. I mean, it's a really important one.
And they are really appreciative of all the time and effort we put into it and the improvement. And you know, I give kudos to Adam and his crew.
Scott's actually the leader. Don't let Ron think he was always late or he was on the road. No, Scott runs the meeting and then we talk about what happened over the weekend. That's it.
So I am working on the spreadsheet, which has needed a ton of cleanup. I haven't been able to do it because it's been front and center in our litigation at the federal and state level. And now that we've gone through the Ninth Circuit, I've started into about 75% done on that. That's the basis for all our projections for pond storage, future plant flows coming at us. So we have some idea how much storage pond capacity that's going to use over time. And I've sat with Adam multiple times, kind of showing him how that stuff works. And when I'm done with it, he should be able to take it and carry it forward for next year and the year after. The Purple Pipe project, I think it's fair to say that's been mired in delays by the Montana Department of Transportation. They can't seem to get it together to give us a permit to make that pipeline crossing. I think the best way to do that, John, is to sit with Kristen and I and kind of walk through the history of that whole town center plan, Purple Pipe project. I've got Google Earth maps that show the pipelines that are in place and what's future. Then I listed the rest of the areas around the golf course that have or plan irrigation reuse water.
But some of that comes from also the stuff we've been doing with AE2S. So we had met with Jordan and that on the permits and
correct
all that stuff.
Correct. And we need to fill that gap.
Yeah.
We need to tighten up how properties connect to the golf course irrigation system. It should be a hold harmless agreement.
Yeah.
An irrigator agreement that says, you know, we'll give you water, what you're paying the going rate on it. So we've got a rate for use water now. And there's no commitment or promise that we can deliver that water. So there is some risk there.
And I believe that was another iron in Susan's fire too. To review.
Yeah. Reed's plan, happy to help Adam. Same with the nutrient reduction plan. These are all in draft forms at this point, same as 3. I already What's that, Scott?
We want one plan that's the reuse management plan, whether it's talking about nutrients or just agronomic water application rates.
Yeah, and one, I didn't write it, but one issue I think we should take a hard run at is under our current plan, DEQ makes this chlorinate through the filter building, which is gonna get demolished, not the building, but the guts of it. The chlorine system stays in place. We spend thousands of dollars chlorinating all this water that goes out through this plant into our storage pond out here, pond 3. And we have since added chlorination injection to this plant as it leaves and gets pumped out to the golf course. I think we can make a run at DEQ in the updated plan to basically say, you know, give us the standard, we have to meet the standard, how we get theirs up to us, essentially. So that would change all this chlorination to water that sits for months. So you have regrowth going on in these ponds, flip it to injection as it leaves and be money ahead doing that, quite a bit of money and hassle.
And that's in there. You asked us to add that piece that's in there now. Document keeps hovering at 95% done. We've been holding it even because of the active litigation. At some point, put a pin in it, have you all review it. Well, actually have Susan and DGS review it and have you all review it. Then give it to DEQ. Maybe,
Yeah.
then we can do that in the beginning of July.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a slow thing for sure. It has been partly because of the litigation. I think it's important to have DGS look at it. That's our Davis, Grams and Stubbs law firm out of Denver, who's been trying these cases for us. The snowmaking, I wasn't sure what exactly it was referring to, but I know Adam and Rich have a good communication line to make sure that the water we're producing and sending up to the storage ponds at the club in Spanish Peaks meet water quality standards.
Comes more along the lines with the tolling agreement that we're working on. So just, you know, kind of what the bigger picture is.
I think that tolling agreement is really important because that, just to remind the board, that basically puts in writing what Rich Chandler has requested. So in our original YC agreement, they're committed to build 130 million gallons of storage. They're a little bit short of that. All the snowmaking they're doing with the 25 million gallons this year puts them over that 130 million gallon threshold. So they're basically trying to get credit for all their snowmaking efforts. And they spent 10 or $12 million for all the piping and pumps for that infrastructure. It gives us winter disposal options. It's not building storage ponds. We know how difficult those can be. And so that basically puts it in writing, buys them time to perform on that, kind of puts it off the table for a period of time. So I think it's an important document that should happen, in my opinion. Contacts. I had 4,000 in my phone. You want all of them?
Just the pertinent ones.
The pertinent ones.
The pertinent ones.
So it'll take a little time to sort through that whole thing, but
I think it's what we're looking for is just really context, because yes, you have Rolodex of half the state, probably half the Pacific Northwest.
and a bunch of baseball coaches, so.
Well, I don't need baseball coach. It's not quite yet. I'll call you
And umpires if you got a pitch. But I can do that and knock it down. DEQ personnel, you know, the best place to meet them is at these big conferences. We were in Great Falls. Got another one coming up, and then the fall water school.
Yeah, then
This October.
the fall.
And that's fine. There'll be quite a few of them run around there, and then in the course of our meetings, you know, we don't go to Helena that much, but I anticipate we will be going there with this reuse stuff, so you'll need some at that point. Inclusion all meeting conversation work being performed. This one, I thought this might be a little onerous. I have a lot of conversations, so I think your point is, I mean, where it makes sense and your schedule's available, mine's available, you get pulled into those things. So if,
It's also, I think, maybe now it's time for more of the redirection instead of them calling you, say, hey, you need to call.
I had 4 calls yesterday, I wasn't even in Big Sky.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's just, you
It's kind
know,
of breaking some of those habits of,
well, and I don't think it's a hard stop. I think it's a transition, and we're seeing it as you sit in more of these meetings, more and more. I'm not forwarding all my emails to you yet. You'll regret the day I do. Let's put it that way. So we're working through that, but and we do regular staff and admin meetings, so I feel like I can just report on my activities at those meetings. Legal, I am more than happy to turn over 100% of all legal cases and matters. And I'm serious about that.
No, you can't though.
Like,
I mean, we have to. Ron, I literally, after a year of retirement, literally in the last 2 weeks, I've been told I have 3 depositions.
right?
I go, you kidding? I don't even know if they're on. But you go, yeah, you're a witness. I go, you kidding?
Right.
That's what's gonna happen. So factor in some of these things, but
Yeah, I'm afraid you're right,
No, you're
Brian, but for all the discovery stuff, you know, I would certainly help. The little less of that I have to do, the better, you know, for my.
you just won't have it. I mean, unfortunately, you don't get the choice, but hey.
I'm trying. I'm trying,
You do get free lunch and you get to go to Costco and you're on your way home and get a chicken.
so, the Zoom thing, the board, I'm gonna stop going to the board meetings. If you want me here, ask me, I'll come in. If I'm speaking to a topic, happy to do that, but I don't think I need to sit in all the board meetings going
no, for
forward.
me, Zoom was, you know, if we're going through something, have a question, you know, you could share the screen and walk somebody through it. So it's just availability and to be able to work when you're working from home.
Okay, and then I have a very capable home office, so a lot of this stuff I can do here, I can do there. So beginning May 1, start 2 to 3 days a week down here. Other days at home, other duties now, the plant startup being the biggest ones. Our census fixed base metering system's going through a big platform overhaul that I started up the learning curve. I'll teach that to Jake and Amy going forward, the Water Smart portal. Terry's familiar with that, Johnny somewhat, Jake somewhat.
I can answer messages.
Yeah, and you have been, that's great. That's great. And then Jim has a well production master file that needs a bunch of cleanup. And then this one, Scott kind of spoke to this whole COSA SFE commitments over time versus vacant lot commitments. That's a big one that needs a lot of pick and shovel work, and I will be helping with that too. It needs an update and it plays into the 107 calculations. So that's my outline, that's my intentions. Are there any questions?
You got it.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that June, we all know you're a big baseball guy. And you're gonna be kind of busy for a couple months, so it's prioritizing what we need to do to keep moving forward while you're out. Because my mantra now is, oh, hey, let's go ask Ron. Hey, let's try to figure it out ourselves first before we go on. And
Great.
And it gives us exercises and stuff to you know, try to find stuff and do stuff. So, you know, I think our top priority is of course Amy, because as you been well aware, I'm well aware of it. That's why the position got created, because this was the district clerk. So now we're taking all this stuff that Ron has done for 30 years and now 4 or 5 people are gonna have their hands. So I think that's the big thing, because we're not busy yet in permits, and I know just enough to get in trouble.
You said it, not me.
But you know, there's still things as we go through and we're clarifying and, you know, doing things. So like right now, I'm doing the Wilson Annex. I've done that on my own. I will meet, but we have, you know, certain ways to do that stuff. So it's kind of Ron now starting to hang out in the background and the rest of us taking forward. So I think prioritizing, focusing that. Letting Ron help clean, because when you start seeing the files, there's a bunch of stuff.
There's a bunch of stuff. There is. Vince is very familiar with the two. And then the other big effort that Vince and Rose have been doing is they're taking on all our permit files. We got hundreds of those, scanning all of those, building file folders on our server. And so that's a massive other subset project that's happening concurrent with the scanning all our plan sets and development files, and it's been a huge effort, really good projects for us. So I think there's a lot to do, and with the list that's outlined, I mentioned in here, I do well to get all this stuff done by December, and I mean that. Very willing to help make that happen though. And then I ended with that. So it's, yeah.
This is helpful. We needed something this extensive. Like Johnny needed something this extensive. He needs to understand the expectations. I would, and any other board members, I want to hear what the board has to say. I comments, I've thought about it since I received it yet, but comment.
I have a couple thoughts, not so much questions, but observations. I think one of the things we're challenged with, and I'm thinking back to almost a year ago, right? And we talked about a 6-month overlap in bringing in a new person, and now a lot of conditions have changed. Not necessarily, I understand and agree, Ron, your focus has been on the completion of the plant, but that's been moving targets, which makes it difficult for us as a board to plan properly. And, you know, we didn't talk about next year's budget, but, you know, budgeting becomes a bit of a challenge. And obviously, I'm an economics guy, accounting guy, so I always start on the money, right? So that's just more of an observation that the conditions have changed. But I think the other thing that's become maybe clearer to me is that the lines of communication and accountability haven't always remained clear, and maybe we need to clarify them as part of this process so we understand. Because if I understand it right, the way we're structured right now, both of you report directly to the board. So
not on all things. You know, I quit signing things as GM. That doesn't mean I don't think like one. You know, I've been doing it.
I'm not saying that, Ron. I'm just saying from an accountability or a communication standpoint, I think we need to clarify where that responsibility is.
Fair.
Unless it's either, you know, with the transition that we're having as Johnny become the general man, is the general manager. You're hired.
Yeah.
You know, but for a long time, you've been kind of also general manager, some other role in that. And I guess we need to clarify going forward, has that accountability, communication, responsibility changed, or does it remain the same? So we're all clear moving forward. And so that because I see this as much as we want to get this down, and I agree with what you started. This is incredibly helpful. We've probably needed this for a while. Should have been having this conversation for a while.
It's overdue.
To clarify.
Well, kind of did.
To not go there again. Yeah.
We've been pursuing this, and it's nobody, I'm not pointing fingers, but we've been pursuing this for a few months. And if I wasn't clear enough about the need to define this clearly to satisfy expectations for both Johnny, you, and the board, because that's what we have right now, is we need to define these clearly. We're in a critical stage here. We're in the fourth quarter.
I think we established when you came on board that Ron reports to you essentially. I think that's been, fairly clear. The expectations were to kind of, manage the plant and so forth. I think my concerns are kind of a little higher up on that list, which is related to kind of conversations you're still engaged in, Ron, and you can't answer them anymore. It's got to be Johnny, like your involvement in the community, and it's been a huge asset to the district for, 15 years. And at the end of the day, if you continue to respond and you continue to stay engaged, that turnover is more difficult. So I think that one's super important. If you want to pull that one back up or
On that communication.
Yeah. Contacts and communications and just kind of making sure that Johnny stays in the mix, because.
Well, and then, yes, and that's all fair game stuff. And it's not like we're not trying to, I'm not trying to not include him on this stuff. Some questions.
It's more the public engagement. So my 2 cents
Right
would
here,
be
collaboration.
is everybody needs to understand, I think at this point in time, that Ron's moving more into a consultant type role to help finish things out. And that's what I was alluding to. The phone calls he gets, he got 4 of them yesterday. And I tried to assert or entertain when I have meetings stuff, hey, I need you guys to contact me or email me. Because that's almost a default. That's default programming for people to automatically call.
And I've been a little, not overly concerned, but I mean, you were drinking water from a fire hose from day one. And
I think it's
I'm trying to manage how much water you're taking on too, but it's 6 months now.
Yeah.
So I think more and more of this stuff naturally needs to go directly in.
I'm with you on that. I think this is helpful in establishing the importance of that and actually making a very concerted effort to make that transition happen versus kind of, still walking an edge, and it's nothing against it. It just needs to happen. I mean, he has to be the one that is that's the main point of contact. All these big topics we have on, the water matrix and reuse and all of, your involvement's important. Spanish Peaks, all these things are important. But he's going to lead that entirely 100%. Should be right now, but we'll have.
Well, a great example's the Flatiron committee meetings you guys are gonna have in front of you. I'm not planning to go to those. If you asked me to come, I would come in, but my plan is not to be in that.
I think that's a good approach.
Yeah.
On a lot of fronts.
Yeah.
And that was consistent with my expectation. I think what we're missing here, I agree 100%. It's time, there were some dotted lines along the way. You were picking some things up. It's time to make those solid lines now.
Yeah.
What we needed, we're got a big piece of it. We needed structure. We really were kind of just seat of our pants on some of this. I know it's working, but it's just time for that next year. The dress rehearsal's over.
Yeah.
The dress rehearsal's over.
And I think, enough time's gone by. The timing of all this is good.
Yeah. Anything else, Mike? These are great ones.
No, I think I also think we should, the vacation thing, I think we need to focus on that to some degree. You, Terry, and Johnny can figure that out. But I just think we have to have some clear expectations there as well. And as you kind of, balance out the family life and balance out, the work life, there's also responsibility to the P&L, kind of what I think what Al is referring to. And it's just kind of the data, the information, how you end your employment here and, some vacation payouts. Just want to be responsible to what is in the, in the employment agreements and.
We don't have any.
I think there's some.
I've been out.
Policy for agreement, but policies what I'm getting.
Policies, yes. Yeah.
The employment agreement, fair enough. There's anything, I understand that, but just that's also something I think it's pretty important, establishing when is it a vacation, when is it not a vacation. That's certainly in the weeds for a board member to make that comment, but I just think it's important to acknowledge it and be responsible to it.
Right, and just and I wrote about this, just so everybody understands, I'm exempt employee, straight salary, my whole time. I wish I could go on vacation and not have to work. I wish I didn't work weekends, and I don't even log that time because there's no benefit to me to log that time. I spent, 4 hours working on this Sunday. There's no benefit to log that because I get paid the same amount and I don't accrue any comp time. So there's no way to make up vacation time other than to stay longer. Terry accrues that weekly, or excuse me, monthly, 8 hours a month. So if I were to try to clear the deck of any overused vacation, that means I would have to work longer, and that's not what I'm proposing to do. I have over 2,000 hours of sick time. And I never use sick time for vacation time. I've never called a vacation a sick day. And so I've got a lot of hours accrued there that could be used to offset any net difference.
I think there's some discussion on that too, and I fully acknowledge I'm an exempt employee too,
Yeah.
so I'm very familiar with
Yeah.
my weekend.
Yeah,
Last week, which I actually submit vacation, but Jenny would say I worked too much, so I understand.
Well, if I had Carla sitting next to me here,
Yeah.
you'd get an earful from her.
So all I'm suggesting is that there's an effort between you, Terry, and Johnny to determine what is qualified or classified as a vacation day, clean up the sick time to make sure that's fair to you, fair to the district. And same thing with vacation. So there's a baseline that we can work from as you start to end your employment. That's all I'm
all fair.
Not yet. but-
Mike, that's a great point. I'd add one word to that too. I think three of you need to come to the board with consensus. Board's not going to get in this. This is a staff operational issue that involves you, Terry, and the three of you. You got to come to the board with consensus on this. And if it's all right with the board, we don't want to get into vacate pay and things like that unless there's a severe issue and they can't come to consensus. But I'm hoping that you guys can do that.
I think I can. I mean, I'm pretty simple. I mean, we've laid out a couple of things already. We haven't talked. You know,
But I just want to make sure.
You know, I really hate to interrupt, but you guys getting into an administrative issue on accounting is really inappropriate.
And I think that's what we just said.
I think it is.
Susan, if I didn't say it clearly, it was you three need to come to consensus. No, if the
Brian, I heard you, and then I heard the rest of starting to the conversation to continue. It
Yeah.
needs to stop. Everything that's need to been said has been said.
Okay, we'll take yes for an answer. It's consensus. But I think it's a good point for everybody. You know, again, this is just structure, and I think that you did a great job summarizing it. And I know you guys do well. Yeah.
Okay, can I at least?
No, geez.
No, I think I need to button it up to make sure I understand. Where I started with this is wanting to ask, is Ron report to the board or is Ron report to John? And what I've now heard, and I'm comfortable with it, you know, I just wanted to be clear. If Ron reports to Johnny, then ultimately it's Johnny deciding if he's comfortable with Ron's plan. And if Johnny's comfortable with Ron's plan,
Okay.
he's the general manager.
So
Ron reports to
gone
John.
through it. He's added his points to it and an agreement, and I think we just got to prioritize and put that game plan together and take it into account the others. Good.
And I think, I mean, we've said a lot, and we need to be better at saying you need to talk to John in some cases.
Great.
It's a two-way street.
Yeah.
Great.
That's fair.
Other board members.
I just want it to be clean.
I just wanted structure and having this, although yesterday morning, I was like, okay, I hope everybody has a chance to read it along with a 327 page agenda. I'm just glad we have structure, but more importantly, I think everybody has to be on the same page. We don't want to manage people. It's not our job. I think we all agree with Susan on that, but we also need structure.
I only manage one.
Yeah, well said.
More summaries. Less PDFs.
No, you're building our history. I've always told them, doesn't matter how long the board packet is, that's our history. So. Well, thank you. This lays it out. Want to finish strong.
All right. Any other comments? Drop, you're kind of quiet over there with that Purdue hat on, but again,
I've been through this in different ways. There can only be one chief executive officer. That's what I learned. That's the only thing I've learned. But these two guys have multiple skills and experiences. Let them come together and decide what it's, what's gonna be the way that they spend the next 6 months. Because they've both got opportunities to really be, the brains of what we're doing.
Okay. Anything else? I'd entertain a motion to adjourn then.
I'll second that, but would you tell me what?
No, you're first, you're making the motion. You're seconding.
I'm making the motion.
I said I'll entertain a motion. You gotta give me that. Let's play by the books here, buddy.
I'll move we adjourn.
Did I hear Al say second? All right, all in favor? Good.
What was the date for the next meeting?
21st.
21st of May.
Yeah.
I think that one's gonna stick.